Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to the Anime Fictions 2.0. Today, we're diving into another exciting whatif Naruto walking backwards on tightrope. Part 2. Hope you loved first part. If you're enjoying these alternate timelines, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and check out the other videos on the channel. And of course, drop your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing your ideas. Alright, enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 17 Reforging. Kakashi leaned against the wooden door frame, watching the woman Shikaku's wife making her way into the next rooms to look for the man himself. Kakashi hadn't made it to the Nara's little corner of the village, after what had happened with the Uchiha. Calling it a compound was an insult, the previous evening, but he had spoken with the astrologer. The anomaly was apparently that 5 stars had suddenly skipped about 5 years of their orbital cycle. Akima had said that it wasn't quite as dramatically weird as it seemed. Those 5 stars, Chizu, Suezu, Kazu, Fuzu, and Kuzu, were known for their erratic behavior, but it was still an interesting phenomenon. This did not allay Kakashi's curiosity in the slightest. He didn't know what he was looking for, though he'd almost had it the previous day, but he knew the answers, whatever they were, lay with the Nara. It was just a matter of figuring out what question went with them. The woman, her name was Nara Yoshino, came back into the entrance hall in the middle of his musings. Shikaku says he's expecting you, she told him. Kakashi shrugged. Leader of the Nara, he said, more to himself than Yoshino. Should have known he'd be waiting. She laughed lightly. Good point. They're in here, she added, stopping at a closed cloth door. Kakashi frowned, though she wouldn't be able to see it behind his mask. They? Why the plural? Oh, Shikamaru's been doing everything with Shikaku since Yoshino began, and then she stopped, as though remembering that what she'd almost said was a secret. Shikamaru's in there too, she finished lamely. The Jounin frowned at her for a moment. It seemed everyone was keeping secrets. Perhaps the conversation with Shikaku wouldn't be as simple as he'd hoped. He shrugged wearily. There was nothing he could do. Thank you, he told her, and entered the room, closing the door softly behind him. Shikaku seemed to be playing shogi with his son, and to Kakashi's shock, the man seemed to be losing. However, they both stopped the moment he entered, so he couldn't be certain. Kakashi, said Shikaku, breaking into a wide smile. He stood up and, crossing the room in 3 strides, shook Kakashi by the hand. It's been far too long. Kakashi treated him to an eye smile. Absolutely. It's good to see you again. Oh yes. You haven't even been in contact since Hataki-senpai left the ANBU, right? Shikamaru asked suddenly. Kakashi did a double take. Wait, he said, and then couldn't think of what question to ask. He settled for, what? Shikamaru chuckled, stood up, and bowed to the startled Sharingan user. ANBU Agent Hawk, serving the Rokudame Hokage, at your service. Yeah, said Shikaku to Kakashi's stunned eye, the only part of his fully stunned face to be seen. It came as a bit of a surprise to us too, and we were expecting something, at least. Shikamaru nodded, looking at Kakashi appraisingly. I'd forgotten just how lazy you looked all the time, he said thoughtfully. You changed after a while. He turned to his father. Dad, please leave us alone. Kakashi and I need to talk about some of the more delicate topics. I.e. the ones you refused to explain, grumbled Shikaku. Fine. Kakashi, we'll catch up over tea when you're done here, all right? Wait, Kakashi said bewilderedly. I came to see you, not your son. And... Calm down, Kakashi, Shikamaru said, waving him to silence, a formidable feat for a 12-year-old. I have the answers, more of them than Dad does. Sit down. They both sat down. Now, Shikamaru began. Don't ask questions until I'm done, all right? Kakashi nodded and settled down to listen. Shikamaru appraised him for a moment before speaking again. I assume you've spoken to someone about the anomaly with the 5 stars about a month ago? Kakashi nodded mutely. Good, Shikamaru said. That makes things easier. The fact is, those 5 stars are involved in several ancient ritualistic jutsu. My clan collects record of these. The most notable is the ritual of the 5 sacred stars of the Gates of Time. Long name, I know nobody actually calls it that. Then again, hardly anyone knows it exists. It's in the care of the Nara. Its secret is that every 300 years, when the 5 sacred stars Suezu, Kazu, Kuzu, Chizu, and Fuzo are aligned in a perfect pentagon in the sky, it can be performed to send the user back in time by exactly 5 years. Shikamaru cocked his head at Kakashi. The stars come back as well, falling into an altered motion cycle, otherwise the ritual would get, to use the common term, spammed and the world would be stuck in a permanent time loop of 5 years. The alignment happened last on May 17th, year 271 of the Shinobi era, 5 years from about a month ago. And you came back through it, Kakashi breathed. The answer to the question he'd been unable to grasp was finally in his reach. Yes, said Shikamaru with a nod. So did Aburame Shino. Kakashi looked at him for a moment before prompting, and Shikamaru grinned. And so did the Rokudame Hokage Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto and his right-hand man, Uchiha Sasuke. Kakashi didn't move for a moment before saying, the kid will be Hokage. Shikamaru shook his head. No, Kakashi-senpai. He is Hokage. Whether acknowledged for it or not, he's my commander, as well as Shino's and Sasuke's. To put it into the simplest terms, if he ordered me right now to murder the Sandaime. You would? Kakashi said, while keeping his voice neutral. If the boy said yes, Kakashi had to take him in for a criminal disloyalty offense. Shikamaru frowned. No. That was what I was going to say, but then I realized that if Naruto ordered the Sandaime killed, I'd immediately have him ousted from office for being in some way compromised. He'd never do that. But my point is that my loyalty is first to my Hokage, and only then to the village's Hokage. Kakashi nodded slowly. He supposed he could understand if Minato-sensei had stepped down instead of being killed, Kakashi's loyalty would be with him far more than with the Sandaime. As long as he wasn't a threat to the current Hokage, and from what he just said, the boy wasn't Shikamaru could keep his primary loyalties where he liked. For now. Anyway, said Shikamaru. That's what it is. Naruto, Sasuke, Shino and I are from 5 years in the future. That's enough to answer your questions, I think. Kakashi nodded. I'll need your dad's confirmation that this ritual even exists, he told the boy, or was he a man? But I believe you. Good, said Shikamaru. Now listen carefully. He frowned slightly at Kakashi, once again clearly appraising him. You must not, under any circumstances, tell anyone about this, about what we are. That includes my family, the Hokage, and anyone else. Kakashi frowned. First off, doesn't your dad know all this? And second, you know I have to report this to Sandaime-sama. Shikamaru sighed. My dad knows about me and Shino, he said. Naruto and Sasuke I've kept hidden from him from the whole clan. I have my reasons. And they Naruto and Sasuke don't know about me and Shino either. We'll operate better as separate cells, and if they know about us, our secret becomes exponentially more compromised. Kakashi nodded. The more people hold a secret, the more likely it is to be revealed, he thought, remembering his lessons in anti-espionage. That was, of course, why Naruto and Sasuke hadn't told him the truth. They wanted their increased power as a secret weapon against their enemies. Shikamaru, however, clearly thought that spending any more energy keeping the secret from him would do more harm than good at this point. As to not telling the Hokage, Shikamaru said, this is a star-rank secret, authorized by the Rokudame. That means that at his discretion other Hokage may or may not be told about it. And he has refused the Sandaime the right to this information. And how would you know that? Kakashi said, despite it being an almost exact explanation of the discussion of the previous day in the Hokage's office. I have ways of finding things out, Kakashi said, Shikamaru standing. And I have ways of keeping people silent if I need to. Kakashi stood too, his brow creasing as he evaluated the boy before him. He couldn't guess what nin and genjutsu he had, but his body was small, and Nara never really used taijutsu to any effect. That would be his weakness if he had to be fought. And at this point, unfortunately, I must use one. Shikamaru didn't seem happy about it. What a drag. It shouldn't hurt. Kakashi tried to charge at the Nara air, but found himself frozen in place. With an effort, he forced his head to look downward. His feet were caught in a shadow possession jutsu. He'd seen its effects many times, but it had never been used on him before. Wait, he said, since he didn't want to go through a fight right now, especially not with someone who honestly meant him no harm. Look, can't you just tell the Sandaime yourself and negotiate terms? If anyone's unlikely to cause problems by knowing, it's him. Shikamaru considered him for a moment. Then he sighed. Don't tell him until I do. You have my word he'll know by the day after tomorrow. All right? Kakashi nodded slowly. Fine. You won't tell him? Shikamaru seemed intent upon this point. No. But I'll make sure he tells me when, and if you do so I can know whether you're lying to me or not. Good, said Shikamaru. Dad, you can come back in. This last was called out in the direction of the doorway. Shikaka came back in quite quickly. Kakashi was sure he'd been at the door the whole time, possibly trying to listen in. His first few words confirmed the Jounin's suspicions. You're getting better at those silencing jutsu, Shikamaru, the man said candidly. I only caught a couple words. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. I'm glad to be making you proud, Dad. Shikaku, Kakashi said quickly, is the time travel jutsu he talked about. Real? The Nara clan head chuckled. Very much so, Kakashi, and Shikamaru, as I'm sure you saw, is live-in proof of it. Kakashi nodded. Thank you. Now I must be going. Ah yes, said Shikaku with a grin. You must be getting to your genin, am I right? I hear there's something odd about your squad. He's working out Shikamaru's secrets, Kakashi thought. But what does it matter? They're not mine to keep or divulge. So he just said there'd better be, otherwise why would I take them on? And with that he was gone towards the memorial stone to summarize the mysteries to Obito. Uzumaki and Uchiha Sasuke, right? Shikamaru was asked by his father the moment Kakashi was out the door. Shikamaru would have rolled his eyes if his father's offense had been any less grave or been upon anyone other than his Hokage. Given the circumstances, he just said flatly, the different ways you say their names prove my point. You're just as much a facilitator of hate as the rest of this village. Uzumaki means something to you, Shikaku translated. I do hope you didn't spontaneously decide at some point that children were overrated and that you thought all women were a drag, boy. I'd rather the bloodline continued. Shikamaru didn't cringe, but it was a near thing. If you must know, I had a very much female fiancé before all of our enemies decided it was a good idea to pound us flat all at once. Mind giving me a name? His father asked cheerfully. Yes, said Shikamaru. I do. After all, I doubt you'd be pleased to know I was going to get married to Suna's ambassador. You were dead last time when I proposed, and I still imagined you turning in your grave. Fine, shrugged Shikaku. I guess I'll find out one of these days. Anyway, I'm assuming in that case, that Uzumaki became the Rokudaime Hokage? Yes, grunted Shikamaru. I was his ANBU commander, but don't let Kakashi hear that. Why? Shikaku asked immediately. Because in about 2 hours he'll think Sasuke had that rank, said Shikamaru. And I don't want him to know I lied to him there, or he'll start to wonder what else I've hidden. And what else have you hidden? Shikaku pressed. What I've hidden from Kakashi, I'm hiding from you too, said the Nara heir flatly. Figure it out yourself. I could threaten to tell Kakashi. Shikaku muttered half-heartedly. But you won't, Shikamaru finished for him. The ritual's been preserved by the Nara for the Nara's use. I've used it, and I know what I'm doing. If I say not to tell Kakashi something, you don't. And if your mother tells you not to touch the cookies in the kitchen, you don't. Chuji has definitely been over too much recently. Chapter 18 Rediscovery. Sweat dripped off Naruto's brow as he studied the opponent before him. He and Sasuke were sparring again taijutsu only. Sakura hadn't arrived at the training ground yet, but they didn't dare go all out, even so Kakashi would be watching, knowing him. The two genin stood on opposite sides of the field. Sasuke was attempting to replicate the Sharingan's analytical capabilities without the use of the red eye itself. He acknowledged that it would always augment his skills beyond anything he could reach otherwise, but it would not go amiss to at least attempt to heighten his own skills. Naruto, on the other hand, was focusing on the reacquisition of all the strength and speed he had lost in the ritual. He was certain that at this point he had nearly a quarter of Rock Lee's speed and almost half his strength. That was an achievement, for only training thus for about a month. And after all, his ninjutsu could frankly wipe the floor with the so-called green beast anyway. They had an odd relationship in the area of taijutsu combat, Naruto and Sasuke, that is. Naruto was faster, more powerful, and better in almost every respect. His style was a blended mess of all of the forms he had learned or even partly learned over the years, almost impossible to predict or analyze. He was dangerous to any taijutsu user. But despite all of this, Sasuke was his equal, for no matter how hard the style was to analyze, Sasuke could at least do it partly. Even with Naruto, he was able to predict where the moves would come from and where they would strike. To anyone else, of course, he would have been a force to be reckoned with. As it was, the two found themselves evenly matched in taijutsu. This might once have been a source of unfriendly rivalry between them. But now it was only a friendly competition and a golden opportunity for training. So train they did. Naruto charged with all the speed he could muster. He formed his left hand into an Academy Basic Styles fist, while his right folded into the spear hand of the Hyuga's gentle fist style. He might not be able to channel his chakra through it, but it could still be devastating when used correctly, though he was certain any Hyuga would have called his uses for their style sacrilege. Except, of course, Hinata. Even as he ran, he was on the balls of his feet, ready to leap in any direction. This was a very much underrated aspect of martial art. Shinobi tended to attempt to hold their ground in combat, deflecting all attacks. Naruto knew better, and so did the martial artists of the exotic styles in the south. If one was bouncing throughout the combat, one had no need to deflect the forceful strikes. One merely was pushed back onto one's feet. As he reached Sasuke, he was already striking. Sasuke was ready. He bent like a tree in the wind, deftly avoiding the lightning-fast spear strike Naruto had thrown at his throat. Then he spun, throwing a palm into Naruto's punch, pushing aside to that it struck the air a full foot away from its intended target at the center of Sasuke's face. Then Sasuke fell, whirling about as he did, and Naruto was only barely able to leap over the sweep that was aimed at his shins. As soon as Sasuke had finished the technique, he was already contorting, avoiding the stomp that would otherwise have crushed his skull. He bent like a whiplash, curving upward until he was standing. The two fighters both spun about, for they had been facing away from one another, and Sasuke easily blocked the ridge strike to his throat that had come with the whirl. They both leapt away again, and the stalemate continued, either fighter even having been seriously struck. The entire exchange had lasted all of 15 seconds, and they were both breathing only slightly more heavily than when they'd begun. Suddenly, Naruto heard the sound of slow clapping behind him. He turned. Kakashi sat on a branch, clapping with a slowness that displayed his characteristic boredom and caustic humor. Such a performance, he said in a sarcastic, monotone imitation of breathless wonder. I've never seen such skill before. Naruto rolled his eyes as Sasuke came to stand beside him. Ha ha. What did you want, Kakashi-sensei? Why are you here on time for once? Sasuke suddenly added, and where the hell is Sakura? Naruto blinked and looked around. It was past the official time, if only by 10 minutes, and Sakura was always on time. What was going on? I saw to it that she was detained, Kakashi said lazily, leaping off of the tree so as to be on their level. I wanted a few questions answered, you see. Naruto steeled himself, praying Sasuke remembered all of their pre-prepared replies and explanations. He'd been expecting this, of course, but it was sooner in coming than he'd hoped. There was a strange look in Kakashi's eye, one that put him off slightly. He'd been expecting something, but somehow this seemed different. But even more worried was the man seemed to be wondering how to begin. Kakashi was never at a loss for words. I once read in a book, he finally said that, and I quote, if there's one person you should never mess with, it's a time traveler. It wasn't a very good book, but it gets the point across. Rokudaime. Naruto's fist clenched against his bidding. This, of all things, he had not expected. Who told you? He muttered. No one, said the man easily. I figured it out. There are records about the ritual of the 5 sacred stars, if you know where to look, and the stars do cause a slight stir among some people when they skip 5 years. Naruto grimaced. Nothing gets by you, does it, Kakashi-sensei? I should hope not, if I taught the Rokudaime, Kakashi grinned. So you did make Hokage then? Yep, said Naruto, but Sasuke cut him off. Cut the banter, Hatake, the Uchiha grunted, and looking over, Naruto saw that his eyes were cold and hard as flints. Who told you? You couldn't possibly have known Naruto was the Rokudaime. I guessed, Kakashi said smoothly. It's not that difficult. The Jounin was thrown backwards into a tree by Sasuke's sidekick. You forget, Hatake-senpai, snarled Sasuke. I was and am your genin student. I know you. You never saw anything in Naruto. You never viewed him as worth your attention. Frankly, I still can't believe or understand it how on earth you managed to write off Namikaze Minato's son, your sensei's son, as a weakling that quickly, but somehow you managed it. If anyone had told you at this time last time around that Naruto would become Hokage, you'd have told them that they'd had too much to drink. The only reason you believed them this time was because we've been careless. So tell B, Hataki-senpai, and by now the Uchiha was standing over the Jounin, glaring down at him. Who told you? Who else came through? Wait, said Naruto quickly. Sasuke turned to look at him. Give me a second. I have an idea. It has to have been a Leaf Nin, he thought quickly. Kakashi wouldn't have believed anyone else. And the only Leaf Nin who survived who would have impressed so much upon him my Rancor. A slow grin spread over his face, and he fought back tears of joy. Which was it, Kakashi-sensei? He asked exuberantly. Shino or Shikamaru? Kakashi blinked. How? Naruto grinned at him. I failed as Hokage, that's all. So? Kakashi shook his head. Shikamaru. Shino's one of you as well, though. Now, what did you mean by saying you failed as Hokage? I'd like to know that as well, Sasuke grunted, glaring at him. Oh, the village was destroyed, of course, Naruto said easily. A better Hokage could have prevented that. I'll do better this time. So, Shino and... He was, however, cut off by a punch to the jaw courtesy of Sasuke's right fist. You bastard, the Uchiha grunted. You... failed? Do you have any idea what failure means? I failed. You did your best. Kakashi was looking back and forth between them as Naruto stood up and faced Sasuke. We both did, he murmured simply. A Hokage is supposed to protect his village. I failed at that, pure and simple. Sasuke clenched its fist. You didn't destroy it either. You weren't Hokage, Naruto countered. I would have been ANBU captain, and you know it, Sasuke snarled. Naruto sighed and nodded. Yes, you would. But I didn't have to deal with the Uchiha massacre. Sasuke shook his head furiously. And I didn't have to deal with the Kyuubi. Face it, Naruto, I did worse. Much worse. You never failed at all by comparison. Naruto sighed and sat down. Maybe you're... No, you are right, he admitted. Then he looked up and met Sasuke's eyes. I guess we know what to do about it then, don't we? Sasuke held his gaze steadily. I'm glad for the offer, but no thanks, he grunted. I'm getting my own redemption. Don't be an idiot, Sasuke, Naruto said flatly. I promised Sakura-chan that I'd bring you back. I don't go for half measures. What are you two talking about? Kakashi asked brightly. Shikamaru told me Sasuke was ANBU captain. He lied, didn't he? Yes, Sasuke muttered, looking over at him sidelong. I was nothing of the sort. If Naruto failed by not protecting the village, there's no word for what I did. And what did you do? Kakashi asked. Sasuke turned to face him fully. I destroyed it, he said flatly, the agony of the guilt pressing down on him harder than ever. I remember killing you, Kakashi. I remember killing you, and Sakura, and everyone else Naruto ever cared about. He sat, partly to talk to Kakashi on his level, and partly because the agony in his heart was making him feel weak at the knees. The Jounin was staring at him in utter amazement. I only remembered how to feel guilty once I'd come back here. I wasn't happy there, and I didn't know why. When I found the jutsu, I used it. Naruto and I found each other. I remembered how to feel. He cocked his head at the Jounin. I know you felt guilty about Obito's death, he said, and his sensei's eyes widened at that, of course. But if that's the most guilt you've ever felt, you have no idea what the word even means by comparison. We aren't you team. You're not Minato. You're Sarutobi, and Naruto's Jiraiya, and I'm Orochimaru. He chuckled dryly at the comparison. Fitting, I suppose? But he's on our side now. Naruto quickly exclaimed to Kakashi. You have to trust him. Please! Kakashi was looking at Sasuke, and the Uchiha met his eyes, hoping that he could convey the darkness and the guilt in his heart through the black pools. I'll believe it, said Kakashi finally. Don't make me regret it. Naruto helped the two of them up. You said you saw to it that Sakura was detained, he said to Kakashi. Care to explain? Kakashi chuckled. I paid young Konohamaru a few riot to use your sexy jutsu in her presence. Naruto shuddered. He'd been careful to see to it that his meeting with Konohamaru had gone exactly as it had the first time. If there was one person he never wanted to change, it was him. Poor kid, he muttered. Kakashi laughed. She should be arriving soon. Sorry I'm late. Sakura called at precisely that moment. Naruto! I'm going to kill you! Naruto turned, saw her running at him, and proceeded to run up a tree. Not my fault! He yelled down it. Konohamaru decides how he uses that jutsu. You invented it. It's a valid combat tactic. It does work, Kakashi muttered to Sasuke. Sasuke nodded. Don't we know it? Get down here! Sakura was yelling. No! Naruto shouted back. Just like old times, thought Sasuke with a slight grin. It'll stay this way this time. And Kami, damn it, you are going to help us with it, Shikamaru. Chapter 19 Reconnections. Aburame Shino leaned idly against a tree. Kiba was mirroring him on the opposite side of the trunk. The two of them were watching a sparring match between Hinata and Kurenai-sensei. It was an exercise their team had always done often. It was practice in observation and lightning predictions, Kurenai had told them. It allowed all three of them to exercise their skill at observing and understanding combat the better to predict their opponent's movements, which was an essential skill in a sensory-type reconnaissance team such as theirs. Shino was watching them, but his mind was elsewhere. Shikamaru had had little contact with him over the past few days. Shino wondered how his plans were coming. He hoped he would be of use again soon. He had little anticipated, when he and Shikamaru had returned to their genin days, just how mind-numbingly bored he'd get during the periods of inactivity. There was little to do, unlike the many troubles he was sure Naruto was facing in his attempts at early team renovation. Team 8 always had been, really, quite functional. The most functional team of its year, at any rate. At that moment, Konohamaru Shino remembered him well. The boy had been a member of a Chunin squad Shino himself had headed in the Fourth War. The mission had been a glowing success and had been a major part in the young man's promotion to Jounin. Ran past in a panic. In a moment, Sakura ran past after him, eyes blazing in fury. Shino looked after them for a moment. From across the tree, Kiba muttered, "What was that about?" Shino shrugged, though he knew the Inuzuka couldn't see him. Maybe saying that his team was the most sane out of these particular three was not quite a glowing recommendation. Shino! Kurenai called. She and Hinata had finished, the girl breathing heavily. You're up! Shino pushed himself from the tree. Taijutsu only? He asked. No, said Kurenai, smirking. You couldn't hold your own in taijutsu if you tried. Ninjutsu and genjutsu only. Shino shrugged and raised his arms as insects began to pour forth from his sleeves. His hives were not as large as they had been for him before, but they were large enough. And fortunately, his chakra had not diminished. In the end, this meant that though he had fewer insects than most, his were among the strongest of all chakra insects in the service of any ninja anywhere. Kurenai had noticed the sudden spike in skill, much as he'd tried to hide it, but she still suspected nothing. What was there to suspect, after all? She wasn't a Nara. She was, however, a Jounin, and her skill showed in the speed of her hand seals. In an instant, she had vanished. He sighed. Genjutsu might be a powerful and valid style, but it was irksome that Kurenai always stuck to the relatively weaker ones, even with him. Though admittedly, perhaps she wouldn't if he didn't give a show of struggling. If only he could stop with the farce, and show himself in his fullest strength. But his ANBU commander had disallowed such rashness, and Shino knew better than to disobey Shikamaru on something like this. He broke the genjutsu by having a chakra insect bite him directly over a nerve in his neck, very near the brain. It stung like Kami's wrath, but the genjutsu was quickly quelled. He exaggeratedly formed fists with both hands to show the pain he was feeling. Kurenai was still surprised by the speed at which the genjutsu had been dispersed, of course, but after a few days with her it was conceivable that he could have picked up such talents, given his sensei. Kurenai would likely assume that he was just a fast learner. Kurenai was already forming hand seals again, and Shino guessed that now it would be a ninjutsu. Better to cut it off than to face it, he decided. He stretched out his arm and a swarm of some of his fastest insects flew forth and grasped her hands, holding them in place. Her eyes widened as he began to form hand seals at a leisurely pace. What need, after all, was there for concern? He might have done the same long ago and regretted it, but now his insects were some of the strongest in the clan. Few ninja of anything but taijutsu specialty could break out of their hold. Then the sequence of seals was done soon enough, and he held the last a serpent. Earth style, he murmured. Barrier Earth Dome Prison. He stretched out his hands. Insects spewed from his sleeves, trying to get to Kurenai before the jutsu was sealed. Many managed it as the dome spread over her, but not all. Shino winced as some were trapped in the enclosing rock. There, he thought. That'll keep her sealed. No one but a Nara would likely find the secret to the sound Nin Jirobo's technique as Shikamura had, and in the meantime it would be draining her chakra, and his insects would be doing the same, increasing the speed of the action. He looked around. They were, unfortunately, not in a good place for echoes. He quickly formed a couple walls of rock with another Earth-style jutsu and then called out to one, knowing the acoustics would throw Kurenai off. Kurenai-sensei. My jutsu is one of the most powerful prisons in existence, to my knowledge. It will absorb your chakra constantly for as long as you're in it, as will my insects in there with you. I suggest you call your loss so that you can keep chakra for later in the day. She had already battled Kiba, fortunately, so he needn't fear alienating the fiery Inuzuka. Otherwise, he continued, I will be forced to maintain the jutsu until your chakra runs low. I'd rather not hospitalize my sensei. And there was her voice, sounding rueful and perhaps a little proud. Fine, Shino. I give in. Shino nodded to himself. There was no pride in such a victory. Had she known just how powerful he was, he might have stood to have a very difficult fight, but she hadn't and still didn't. And an easy victory gained by being underestimated, while it might have given Shikamaru a feeling of success, gave no satisfaction to an Aburaim. He let the jutsu fall. His insects flew back to him as soon as there was a hole in the rock wall. Once it had fallen fully, he saw Kurenai seated in the center of the circle, looking rather amused. Her lips were twitching into a smile as she watched him and her eyes were warm. Very good job, Shino, she said, taking in the rock walls that were even now lowering from around them. Is the weakness directly opposite you? Yes, he told her, hands going to his jacket pockets. Chakra flows through the entire dome. That was why his dome had been so much smaller than Jirobo's, not because he didn't have enough chakra, of course, but because he shouldn't, and it slowly consumes the chakra of the enclosed person or people. My insects sped up the process. A very useful jutsu, said Kurenai. Where did you learn it? Shino shrugged. A scroll. It was true, he had been studying jutsu in the ANBU's common room when he'd run across it. Remembering its brutal effectiveness against the retrieval team in their Genin days well, Chunin for Shikamaru, he had been quick to learn it. It was harder to do with less chakra, making the dome smaller it was easier to learn full size. That was why it was reserved for ANBU and high-level jounin of the earth nature. Which was exactly what he was. He might prefer using the Aburaim insect jutsu, but he was earth affinitive, and could use those techniques when he needed to. Jirobo, of course, wasn't jounin level. He could only learn the jutsu because of his unusually high chakra reserves. Kurenai nodded. Well, it's certainly useful. Keep it for when you need it. Shino started to nod and then, his ninja's sixth sense which had kept him alive many times going haywire, he spun to face the ninja who had just leapt onto the tree Hinata and Kiba were next to. It was Naruto. And in an instant he was joined by Sasuke. Shino's fist clenched involuntarily for an instant before he let it loosen again. The best laid plans of mice and men go awry, he thought grimly. So Shikamaru had finally slipped, it seemed, and now not only were they twice as likely to be revealed to the general ninja public, or at least to the Konoha Council, but they were also strategically crippled. Shikamaru was right, of course Naruto would insist on collaborating. He was Naruto. The duo leapt down from the tree and stood before him. Even from where he stood, Shino could hear Hinata's sharp intake of breath at Naruto's sudden appearance. He was sure any of Sasuke's fangirls would have reacted the same to their crush. Or perhaps worse. Naruto, said Shino cordially. It's been a while since we last spoke. Naruto snorted. You have no idea, he said. Or actually you do. Come on, Aburaim, Sasuke said quietly. Nara Shikamaru wants a word with us. Shino studied the Uchiha for a moment. Naruto trusted him, that he knew, and he, of course, trusted his Hokage. But he would be lying if he said he was fully confident of Sasuke's loyalty. Does he know it yet? He asked. No, said Sasuke flatly. But when he does, he will agree that he wants to talk to us. Ah, said Shino. Now? Now, grunted the Uchiha, leaping back into the tree. Shino nodded and followed. He turned to look at his young Hokage. Naruto had frozen, facing toward them, but he was looking at Hinata. Hi, Hinata-chan, he said, and Shino knew he was having trouble keeping his voice at its normal levels. Hey, Kiba. Sorry to swipe your teammate. He'll be back soon. He'd better, Kurenai grunted. He's still got training to do. Naruto turned to her, nodded wordlessly, and leapt up the tree to the other two. And they were off to the Nara area of the village. Shikamaru was back to playing shogi with his dad. Shikaku was questioning him on his motives as they gamed, and Shikamaru was content to answer what he was willing to. Are you certain Kakashi won't tell them about you? Shikaku was asking. Shikamaru had told him about the other two time travelers and his conversation with their sensei once it was clear the man had worked out Naruto. Fairly certain, yes, said the young Nara with a shrug. Naruto wouldn't figure the oddity of him knowing so much if I know the kid at all. And he won't reveal it if he has other options. Yes, but there's the Uchiha, said Shikaku. He's observant, isn't he? In battle, maybe, grunted Shikamaru. But out of it he's just a self-absorbed prick, unless he's changed a lot more drastically than I could have predicted. I guess I have then, said the voice of Uchiha Sasuke from the window. Shikamaru turned with perfect poise to face the glass square. Sasuke, Naruto, and Shino all stood side by side watching them. Shikaku grinned at him. You lose, son. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. What a drag. He stood up and opened the glass door. The trio filed in. Shikaku-san, said Shino with a deferential bow to Shikamaru's father. Then he turned to Shikamaru. Not my fault, he said flatly. They just came at me. You two should be with Kakashi, Shikamaru told Naruto and Sasuke. Why aren't you training or doing missions? We made Kakashi give Sakura a private lesson while we took care of a little business, Sasuke grunted. Why didn't you tell me you were back, guys? Naruto asked loudly. We should be working together. No, said Shikamaru flatly. We can cover more ground as separate cells. That's why we didn't tell you we knew you'd insist on combining forces. It makes sense, Sasuke said. But... Wait, said Shikamaru. He turned to his father. Dad, mind leaving us alone for a bit? We need to catch up. Listen at the door if you want. Fine, shrugged Shikaku. He walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. Shikamaru shut the glass door. Sit down, all of you, he said. The four of them sat around the shogi table. Naruto should know better than to go against your judgment, Shikamaru, Sasuke continued, as though there had been no interruption. Don't you, Naruto? Of course, said Naruto outraged. I'd have been assassinated by the Hyuga long ago if it hadn't been for Shikamaru's help. Sasuke cocked his head. What do the Hyuga have to do with anything? Well, Shikamaru explained. When Naruto got the office of Hokage, he was all for starting his career by just walking up to the Hyuga compound and yelling, Hey guys, as your Hokage, I officially forbid you to put the branch house curse seal on anyone. Also, be nicer to people like Hinata. Sasuke winced. Seems like Naruto. Precisely, nodded Shino. And it'd have gotten him killed. I told him that, Shikamaru continued, and Shino and I came up with a plan. Naruto couldn't abolish the Hyuga traditions alone or with brute force. He needed the support of the entire village. He needed to make it easier for the Hyuga to give and then to keep fighting. Sasuke nodded slowly, eyes narrowed. Political warfare. Shikamaru grinned. A more exciting battle I have not known, he said. I gave him his rhetoric and he used it to turn all of the clans to his side. Half of the Hyuga were with him too. In the end, it was the village against a few old Hyuga elders and they knew better than to fight the masses. Mob mentality is a dangerous weapon, murmured Shino softly. Sasuke chuckled. You're right, Naruto. He did save you from assassination. I know. Naruto laughed. I couldn't be political to save my life. But how did you and Shino find out about the ritual and get back here, Shikamaru? Shikamaru stretched. Long story, he said. First, I should tell you, we also didn't want you two to know about us because it made it twice as likely that our presence here would get out. Can't afford that. Sasuke nodded. Makes sense. But I should tell you, even so Gaara came back with me. Shikamaru blinked in real surprise, an unusual emotion on his face. The Godame Kazekage? Sasuke nodded gravely. He was the one who convinced me to come back at all. He told me that the Ichibi knew the jutsu. In exchange I took him with. Shikamaru leaned back, mind whirring. Interesting, he murmured. How will it go with Suna, I wonder? This will give us some very interesting Chunin exams. Will Gaara prevent Suna's allying with Odo, or will he allow it so he can get rid of Orochimaru early, do you think? Sasuke shrugged. He won't know my motives. For all he knows, I might be willing to ally with Orochimaru. Does that help? Shikamaru nodded slowly, closing his eyes and taking his meditative position. It might. It all depends on how strong he thinks he is. If he feels strong enough to take out Orochimaru at this time, and to avoid you, he'll allow the alliance. He's strong enough, said Sasuke flatly. His chakra at our time was incredible, and now he's a Jinchuriki, too. So we can guess he'll lure Orochimaru in, said Shikamaru, a vicious smirk spreading across his face. Good. But how did you get back? Naruto pressed. You two were captured by the Akatsuki. Shikamaru nodded. All right. Get comfortable, cause this could take a while. Chapter 20 Capture. Shikamaru's eyes opened slowly. His teeth gritted involuntarily against the throbbing pain in his skull. Damn, he muttered. My head. The Akatsuki had found him on a covert mission, he now remembered. Kisame had hiven the back of his skull a taste of his sword hilt, and he'd been out like a light. This was the aftermath. He sat up, ignoring the agony. He was in a small room of concrete or gray stone. It was completely unfurnished save for a single raised platform of rock on which blankets had been laid. My bed, he thought dully. Looking around, he whispered to himself, my prison. He hoped Naruto would be able to manage. For the moment, he satisfied himself with contemplating the nature of his prison. There were no windows, unsurprising. For a ninja prison, windows were an escape waiting to happen. The door consisted of bars of a strange silvery metal which was almost certainly chakra absorbent. And he couldn't feel his chakra. The prison, it seemed, was capable of consuming chakra, rather like Shino's earth-style barrier jutsu. Or perhaps it only nullified chakra. Shikamaru felt no chakra at all, but if he was totally dry, he'd be dead. A ninja's chakra coils intertwined so completely with his various organ systems and blood vessels that if it were empty he would be dead in minutes. Chakra exhaustion was both partial and reversible. Chakra void was neither. Kami, his head hurt. He lay down in his bed, his head resting on the blissfully soft pillows. The bed might be stone, but it didn't matter, the blankets and pillows were warm and soft. He made a mental note to return the favor to the Akatsuki if they were ever caught. And then he slept. When he next awoke, he was not alone. The boy won't go along with it, Madara-san, Zetsu was saying. No matter what he says, it makes a difference who it is. He does care, unfortunately for us. I am aware of that, grunted Madara's low voice. But you underestimate his pride. He has said that the Namikaze means nothing to him. To go back on that would be to admit his wrong and that he cannot do. And so he will assist us, whether he likes it. I think you overestimate your clan's pride, Madara-san, said Zetsu softly. He's getting tired of this, you can see it in his eyes. We have perhaps 2 years at the most before he sees it himself. And something like this will have that. There was silence. It is a valid point, said Madara softly. But you overestimate something as well. Sasuke is meaningless. Certainly, I would rather he survive and that an Uchiha channel the demon, but that is merely a simple satisfaction. What is important is that we have strength. And contingency Kitsun's strength will be far greater than that of Uchiha Sasuke. And you are willing to forego your clan for that? Madara laughed. For a time. The Sharingan is derived from the Jubi. Once we call it down, I will be able to copy the gene and recreate the Uchiha in any case. It makes little difference. Very well, said Zetsu. I only ask that if it comes to it, you kill Sasuke before he kills one of us. Shikamaru watched his door intently as Zetsu's black skin and yellow eyes walked past it. There was a short pause. I imagine you heard all that, Nara, murmured Madara. Of course, muttered Shikamaru. Care to tell me what contingency kitsune is? Contingency plan kitsune, Madara corrected. Contingency kitsune doesn't exist yet, it will be the result. Fine. Contingency plan kitsune then? Shikamaru asked dully. No, Madara said flatly. I don't do monologues. They cause problems. Damn, muttered the Nara. After a moment, he said, I hear you're having a bit of trouble with Sasuke. Not at all, Madara chuckled. But Zetsu is quite correct. While Sasuke has caused no stir yet, there is the potential there. Why? I don't do monologues. Damn. Shikamaru exploded, if that was the right word for such an isolated, quiet exclamation. Madara was chuckling. Now I understand why Sasuke loves his monologues so. It is amusing to wind you leafing up. Shikamaru tucked himself in. He hadn't slept long enough and was still tired. If you say so, bastard. Madara didn't answer, and Shikamaru found himself falling asleep again. The next time he awoke, things were silent. There was no noise or movement about him. He was slightly hungry, but he felt sure he'd get food soon enough. The Akatsuki wanted him alive, probably so they could gloat if and when they won. In the meantime, he tried to devise an escape. If one existed, and it did, it was impossible to protect from all possibilities. He would find it. He was, after all, Nara Shikamaru. And so he began to think. After about an hour, he heard footsteps coming down the hallway towards him. He opened his eyes and waited. No force on earth could have prepared him for what came into his field of view. A young woman was walking past his cell door, a young woman with sharp, angular features, blonde hair tied into 4 frizzy pigtails, and a fan slung on her back. It was Temari. And she was carrying the jacket-clad Aburame Shino under her arm. He stared at her until she crossed out of his field of view. After a moment, he heard a metal door opening and the sound of a body being thrown onto a stone floor. Temari walked past again, now without Shino, but this time Shikamaru noticed something. Her eyes were without pupils. It took him only an instant to realize what was happening, and as soon as he did, his heart ached. She'd been caught in some kind of enthrallment jutsu. She was enslaved by the Akatsuki. He closed his eyes, looking down, trying to achieve his customary mastery over his emotions. Enthrallment jutsu were almost always irreversible except by the death of the caster, he knew. Then I'll raise Akatsuki to the ground and kill the caster, he determined. There was no loud determination in the thought like Naruto would have had with a statement of that kind. There was only a quiet conviction, a firmness born only of certainty. But first, he decided, I have got to get out of here. He took stock of his situation. Shino was here now, that changed matters. Shikamaru considered. They had very different talents. Perhaps, together, they could succeed where one might fail. When Temari came again half an hour later, he was still in a meditative position, having still not fully built up his plans. He had several shapeless ideas, however. He looked up when he heard a scraping sound. The enslaved girl was pushing a wooden tray into the room under the door. It bore a bowl of stew, a glass of water, and a small bed of lettuce. He inhaled slightly. It smelled delicious. Odd, he'd been expecting minimal accommodations. Instead, he received a meal that, while small, looked to be as easy on the tongue as any of the meals he'd ever had on missions. Madara-sama tells me to inform you, Temari broke into his thoughts, and tears almost came to his eyes at the toneless quality of her voice. The fire in it was gone. The food is not poisoned in any way. The Akatsuki is experimenting with various cell conditions to see which serves their purposes best. Every prisoner is in different conditions. Shikamaru almost laughed. If he and Madara weren't bitter enemies, he felt he might have enjoyed an intellectual chat with the man. As it was. Would you ask him who it was who enthralled you? He asked Temari. I would like to know. I was instructed to relay your questions, Temari said flatly. Expect a reply at Madara-sama's convenience. Shikamaru nodded gracefully, carefully keeping his face composed. Thank you, Temari. For a moment, an almost confused expression flitted across the thrall's face. Then she seemed to dismiss it and walked away. Shikamaru brought the tray away from the door and knelt beside it. There were even chopsticks, and not the throwaway ones one was given at restaurants. These were proper chopstick cylinders of wood, carved with the likenesses of dragons, phoenixes, and everything in between with tips of brass at the end where they were meant to be held. He only wasted a moment admiring them before proceeding to eat. He honestly believed Temari he was already depleted of chakra, and the Akatsuki clearly wanted him alive, so what could they do through a meal? He refused to let his mind go through the many possibilities. They might be numerous, but not one of them had any significant probability of occurring. No, not even all of them put together. When he was finished eating, he set himself back down into a meditative position. It would take time to come up with a plan, he knew. But given the circumstances, he had little shortage of time. Shino awoke about 2 hours later, though Shikamaru by this time had completely lost track of time. Shikamaru called his name as soon as he had his fellow ANBU agent groaning. Shino? Hawk-senpai. He heard Shino mutter weakly. So you're here too? Yes, said Shikamaru. Unfortunately. Shino groaned. Did I headbutt Sakura's fist recently? Shikamaru chuckled. My head hurt when I first came in too. I think they've taken to doing that to us. Kami knows why. They want prisoners, Shino grunted. Shikamaru, listen. Temari-san and Kankuro-san. I know, said Shikamaru quietly. Temari, at least, is under a jutsu. She's their slave now. Damn, said Shino, just barely loud enough for Shikamaru to hear. My thoughts exactly, agreed Danara. They sat in silence for a time, and then, at long last, Shikamaru's first plan was finished. It seemed likely to him that it would be the only one he needed. Shino, he said. Remember Bugs? Shino didn't answer. He wasn't meant to. Remember Bugs was a code Shikamaru had set up for a contingency like this. If he needed to talk to Shino quickly and quietly, Shino would send an insect and it would relay the plan. After about a minute, the chakra insect crawled into Shikamaru's cell and on to his waiting finger. And so he whispered his plan into it. When he'd finished, he sent it on its way back to Shino. After a moment, he heard a soft grunt of assent from the neighboring cell. Shino had received and understood the plan. Now all Shikamaru had to do was wait for Shino to finish his part. A few more hours had passed before anything changed to break the monotony. You wanted to ask me something? Madara said, stepping into Shikamaru's doorway. Shikamaru frowned. The man was silent, very bad sign. I asked Temari. You should know. An unfortunate oversight, said Madara. I told her to tell me if you had questions, not what they were. So I have no idea what you asked. Who enthralled her? Shikamaru asked flatly. Madara chuckled. I did, he said. And her brother Kankuro, too. But you see, you can't free them by killing me. Why not? Shikamaru growled. Madara actually threw his head back and laughed. I would never have expected such ferocity from you, Nara-san. But you see, if death is what breaks the bond between thrall and master, then I am secure in my ownership. Madara looked down and Shikamaru glared into the holes in his mask. I am Madara Uchiha. I am already dead. Shikamaru blinked. What? Madara chuckled again. Oh no. You've heard too much as it is. That's why the reanimation jutsu worked on you, Shikamaru said with a strange horror dawning. You're not alive. No, Madara agreed. I am not. But then what are you? Shikamaru asked in bewilderment. How are you standing here? Madara shook his head at him. No, Nara. You know now as much as you ever will. The girl is mine. And that is irrevocable. You cannot change it. And he was gone. But his last words had reminded him of something he'd somehow managed to forget. Son, He remembered his father saying on the day he was named an ANBU agent, "There's a jutsu our family keeps. It's time you learned it, and it's looking more and more like you'll be the only one to use it every day. Good luck, Shikamaru, and keep it safe." The ritual of the 5 sacred stars. Passed down by the Nara for generations. The one thing Madara could not predict which could save Temari. Shikamaru smiled slightly. It was the year 271 of the shinobi era. It had been 300 years since the jutsu had last been performed. It was time it was performed again. Chapter 21 Escape. Shino sat cross-legged in the center of his cell, his eyes closed. He found often that it was easier to work with his insects that way, though he didn't have that luxury in battle, of course. He was spread much thinner than he liked now. His stores of chakra were minimal because of the jutsu on the cell around him, and his body rejected the idea of spreading what little he had into his insects. But this was Shikamaru, and his plans were the best. So Shino now had all of the hives inside his body working at overdrive to spawn the insects he had lost in his recent fights, and those which he still had were even now assembling, ready to act. He guessed it would be about 2 hours before all was made ready. Always assuming chakra exhaustion didn't get him in the middle. Shikamaru waited, thinking. Now that his plan was being made ready, he had started to think of all of the potential flaws he hadn't yet considered. And so now it was time to ensure that the most obvious one would cause no problems. So he waited. At length he heard someone passing by his cell. He reached forward and gripped the bars, stretching one hand out through a slot. "Please," he said, making his voice more pitiful than it ever had been before. "Please let me go. I can't stand this anymore." It was Suigetsu, and he was unimpressed. "Nara Shikamaru," he said. "Not going to work, I'm afraid. We all know you too well." Shikamaru shrugged, drawing back from the cell door. "It wouldn't have worked for anyone, I expect." "Most likely," Suigetsu agreed. "Worth a shot, though," Shikamaru said. "Perhaps," Suigetsu nodded. "Not always, though. If our Kazekage guest tries something like that, for instance, he'll be lucky to survive." Shikamaru blinked. "You've captured Garasama?" "Oh yes," Suigetsu chuckled. "Just a few minutes ago. A very important night this is." Shikamaru squinted at him. "What did you do?" "Oh, I wouldn't want to worry you," the former Miss Nin chuckled. "Good night, Nara-san." As he walked past the cell, Shikamaru grinned privately. In spite of all of that, he'd known from the moment he reached through the bars what he'd wanted to. Things could travel through the bars of the cell doors. Shino smirked suddenly in the darkness. It was ready. Quietly he sent his insects out of his cell. They crept out under the bars and began to clamber on top of one another. Their colors shifted and they smoothed out. In a moment a perfect replica of Shino stood outside the cell. It walked out of Shino's line of sight, going, no doubt, to free Shikamaru. Shino was content to wait. There was silence for approximately 2 minutes while the insect clone picked the lock, and then a barely audible click was heard. Shikamaru was free. The insect clone came back into Shino's line of sight and began to pick the lock on his cell door while Shikamaru watched both sides of the corridor, scanning for approaching foes. None came, and soon Shino was out of his cell, sighing in relief as he felt his chakra return and allowed his insects to disperse back into him. "All right," he said after a moment's rest. "What's next?" Shikamaru looked about. "Be ready for a fight," he grunted. "There's no way out but through." Shino's eyes widened behind his shaded glasses. "That's your plan?" Shikamaru shrugged. "We're out of our cells. That's good, at least." Shino shook his head slowly. "We're dead." "I don't think so," said his ANBU captain. "Follow me, and for Kami's sake, be quiet." Shino didn't need to be told he was an ANBU agent, after all. They crept silently along corridor after corridor. At every fork, Shikamaru listened intently for a moment for what Shino didn't know, and then seemingly chose a course at random. At long last they heard voices at one such fork. Shikamaru immediately turned toward them. "Why?" Shino almost asked, but he held his tongue. They could not afford to be caught. Shikamaru held up a fist ahead of him, the order to stop. Shino froze. The voices were speaking quietly, but they were clearly right around the corner. And then Shikamaru vanished. A chameleon jutsu, Shino thought. He's going to scout it out. And so he was. Shikamaru stepped, quietly and invisibly, around the bend. There was a room before him, dimly lit. There were a couple ninja watching the path opposite him, the way to the entrance, he thought, or rather, the exit, and there were others guarding something on a table in the corner. He crept up the wall and looked from the ceiling down at whatever it was. The table was made of mahogany, and a silken red cloth lay over it, as though the object was on display. And it deserved it. Upon the table, laid out in full shape, was the most masterfully crafted suit of modern armor Shikamaru had ever seen. There were blue lenses where a man's eyes would go. The silvery steel of the suit glistened in the light of the candles beside it. The arms contained an array of weapon-sealing scrolls, and Shikamaru was certain they were already filled. The gauntlets were each masterpieces of razor-sharp metal, and it was certain that if the man wearing this armor punched someone, their face would look like ground meat. The boots ended in slightly hooked points. All of the major muscle areas were filled already, as though there were mechanical assistances to the muscles that would one day be there. The strength of any man would be doubled in that. And Shikamaru's eyes caught the small, red emblem of the Nile-tailed fox emblazoned on the left pectoral of the armor. Contingency plan Kitsune, he thought in awe. But there was no time to think on it now. He fell back to Shino. We're on the right track, he whispered into his companion's ear. Chameleon and follow. They both took on the chameleon jutsu and crept through the room. Shino, Shikamaru knew, would be watching for the slight distortion ahead of him. Shikamaru only had to lead them well. He did. Soon they were out of sight of the guards. Shikamaru allowed the jutsu to fade in relief. Good, he murmured. Let's go. Now he had to keep listening constantly. There would be guards more and more as they approached the exit. He was right. The guards got more and more common, and it got harder and harder to avoid them. But in the end, they weren't caught until they could finally see the exit. Shikamaru almost sighed in relief. There was only a stone door in their path now. That and about 10 nin. He and Shino crept along the walls, trying to avoid confrontation, but after a moment, there was a shout, and Shikamaru knew they'd been caught. He immediately began a shadow possession, holding all of the ninja in place. His chameleon just faded. Get that door, Shino, he said fiercely. One of the ninja was clearly much stronger than the average peon. He was giving Shikamaru quite a fight. Shikamaru shook his head. Fool, he thought. He mind taking a kunai out of his imaginary holster and stabbed himself in the chest with it. That man didn't die, but most of the others did. This meant that, with fewer targets, Shikamaru could switch to a shadow strangle jutsu. He did. The rest of them fell. And then the door was open and Shino was calling, Run, Hawk! And Shikamaru did, running as fast as his legs could carry him, Shino right beside him, for coming up behind was Zetsu. They had managed to escape. It was now several hours later. Shino leaned against the wall of the cave they'd found. Shikamaru was beside him in the same position. So, said Shino after they rested for a time. What's your plan? Shikamaru chuckled weakly. I'll tell you later. Too tired now. Let's get some defenses set up, and then we'll catch some sleep. Shino nodded, standing. He made his way to the mouth of the cave and proceeded to lay several traps both just inside and around the cave entrance. Shikamaru was setting down a barrier jutsu behind him. Once they were finished, they leaned back against the walls again, and Shino allowed exhaustion to claim him. Shikamaru rose early. This was partly because he wanted to get up before his stiffness froze him in place. Rock did not make a good bed. But he was also very much worried. With him captured and escaped, it made sense for Madara to try to destroy the Leaf Village while he wasn't there to warn them. So it fell to Shikamaru to try to find out what was going on. But first he had to wait about half an hour for Shino to awaken. In that time, his slight worry had easily evolved into fully fledged fear. He was unable to avoid infecting his companion with it. Do you think the village will be all right? Shino asked him as they took down their traps, preparing to move. Shikamaru shook his head. I don't know, old friend, he muttered. I don't know. Once they were ready to leave, they made a beeline for the nearest village. It seemed quite empty at first, until they realized that every adult was congregated at the tavern. And Shikamaru had a good guess as to why. He was quite right in the end. Shikamaru stepped into the crowded room. "Get us a spot," he told Shino, who nodded and made a mad dash to the nearest vacant place, a cramped corner, still better than what Shikamaru had expected to find. The entire town seemed gathered here, and Shikamaru wanted to know why. He and Shino had removed their forehead protectors and intended to gather information by mingling. The first step, of course, was to get drinks. The Nara forced his way through the masses to the bar. "A bottle of sake and 2 glasses, please," he told the barman. Konoha brewed. The barman looked unhappy. "I wasn't intending to sell any Konoha sake," he said. "I was going to keep it till the prices rise." Shikamaru frowned outwardly in confusion, but inwardly he felt sick. He knew the laws of supply and demand better than most ninja. Why would the prices rise? "Haven't you heard?" the barman asked in surprise. Konoha fell. "Last night. The Uchiha trader destroyed it, apparently." Shikamaru only allowed himself a moment's glance downward in horror before he looked back up at the barman. "Sooner brewed then," he grunted. "And make it 2 bottles. I could use the alcohol." The barman looked at him sympathetically before passing him the bottles and glasses from under the bar. "Had a girl in Konoha or something?" "Close enough," the now former ANBU captain grunted before making for Shino. They'd left the village behind them a few minutes ago. And now Shino wanted to know what their plan was now, with no village to protect. "What do we do now, Shikamaru?" he asked, not even bothering with the code name. "We can try to find Naruto-san. He'll probably have survived. Kurama's quite difficult to kill." Shikamaru shook his head. "No," he said. "We'll go through with my old plan. All that this means is that the stakes are higher." "And what is your plan?" Shino asked him. Shikamaru would have grinned if there was an ounce of feeling left in his heart. The cold numbness would fade, he knew, once he got to the past, but for now he felt as though he himself had died in the battle the previous night. "There's a jutsu," he said slowly. "It's been protected by my clan for almost 3 centuries. It's a ritual. It will only be performable once in our lifetimes this May." "Next month," Shino acknowledged. "Precisely," Shikamaru nodded. "We'll use it, and when we wake up, it'll still be May. 5 years ago." Shino froze. "A second chance?" he whispered. "We can prevent it all," said Shikamaru. "But we've got to get to work. There are a lot of reagents to gather." A little over a month later, they had the ingredients. The symbols were ready. All that was left was to wait. They sat together in silence. What was there to say left? They'd been through hell, and now they were coming back from it together. They knew how monumental this was. And so they merely enjoyed the companionship in perfect quiet. The sun set. The moon rose. And 6 stars twinkled out, shining out like the rays of salvation. 5 formed a pentagon around the 6th. They looked at one another, nodded, and as one, drove the spikes into their own chests. And so Naruto, Shikamaru, and Aburame Shino joined their Hokage as genin. Chapter 22 Retelling. "And the rest is history," Shikamaru finished, leaning back against the wall. "We found out that you were back here and started watching what you were doing. Then Kakashi worked it out and spilled the beans." Naruto nodded, grinning. "I'm glad to have you, Shikamaru. I swear I don't know what I'd do without you." "Probably have wound up lying in a ditch a long time ago," the Nara chuckled lazily. "But enough of that." He leaned forward away from the wall, looking intently at Naruto and Sasuke in turn. "We need to get to business. Have either of you got any idea what that armor I saw was?" Naruto cocked his head in confusion. "What does it matter?" he asked. "It doesn't exist now." "Ideas are weapons, Naruto," Shino said. "You should know that, with Shikamaru as your ANBU commander. If we know what that was supposed to be, it's an advantage over Madara now. It might give us an idea of how he thinks, or it might give us an idea of how to use it ourselves, or how to prevent it if the idea comes to him again." "So?" Shikamaru asked again. "Any ideas?" Naruto shook his head blankly. Sasuke tried to, but there was an odd look in his averted eyes. Shikamaru just looked at him. "You're on thin ice as it is in my book, Uchiha," he said flatly. "Spill." Sasuke grunted. It was one of Madara's plots. The armor does three things, for the most part. It augments the wearer's physical capabilities, gives them chakra and jutsu similar to that of the Nine Tails, and enslaves them to Madara. Anyone in that armor would be dangerous beyond belief. Shikamaru cocked a brow. It was unfinished? No, said Sasuke, shaking his head. There was one particular person Madara wanted in that armor, that's why it was unoccupied. Who might that? Shino began, but Shikamaru cut him off. I'm only going to ask this once, the Nara growled, his rage at the insults slowly building. How much did you have to do with making that armor? Sasuke just looked at him bleakly. Too much, he murmured. Shikamaru glared at him for an instant more, and then he sighed and looked away. I won't give you trouble over it, he muttered. You're doing fine at that as it is. Shino looked over at him, but Shikamaru met his gaze. Later, he said silently. Naruto can't hear this. Aloud he said, well, anything else we need to know? Plans and the like? Naruto looked at him. No changing the subject, he growled. What was that about Shikamaru? What's so bad about that armor? It would have been a superweapon, Shikamaru lied simply. Sasuke's involvement shows just how loyal he was to Madara's cause. That part was even truer than Naruto knew, but Shikamaru wasn't going to burst his Hokage's bubble over this. It was all in the future now. Naruto nodded. Oh, of course. But Sasuke's on our side now. You know that, right? Shikamaru looked at Sasuke, and the Uchiha met his eyes. And in an instant, Shikamaru saw none of the coldness and hatred that Sasuke's eyes had held for the past 5 years. Instead, he saw a horrible, crushing sense of guilt. Yes, he finally said, looking back at the blonde. I know. But have you got any plans? Shino pressed. Bring them back to the original topic. Anything we need to know about? Naruto shrugged. Not really. We want Danzo dead as soon as possible, but we're not going for that one without proof. Shikamaru nodded, thinking. Any ideas as to what we can use for that proof? The Sharingan, Sasuke said quietly. They all looked at him. Danzo stole Uchiha Shurasui's Mangekyo, he muttered. Itachi knows about it. If we could just get him to testify, a Yamanaka could prove it. Shikamaru leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his face. Perfect, he murmured. Then our priority is retrieving your brother. And I have an idea of how to go about that. Naruto leaned forward. How? Shikamaru smirked at him. By being patient, Hokage-sama. What good will that do? Naruto asked, bewildered. It didn't work last time. Oh, we'll do something, Shikamaru chuckled. But not right now. There are things to wait for. Now listen, Naruto, Shino said. We have to work separately, do you understand? It's why we hid from you. We can cover more ground like this. Like I said, I trust Shikamaru, Naruto nodded. So we'll work separate. Got it. But let me know if something good comes up, alright? Done, agreed the Nara heir. Now I think we're done planning. Get going, you two. Shino, get back to Kurenai. And, he added, looking at the wall-mounted clock to his right, it's time for Team Asuma to meet, too. I'd best head for Chuji. Why do you guys meet at 10 in the morning? Naruto asked offhandedly as they trooped out. Shikamaru chuckled. Because Asuma and I are lazy, Chuji likes big breakfasts, and Ino needs the sleep, what with not eating any food. It was mutually advantageous. Naruto stared at him, stopping in his tracks. That's ridiculous. We work later, Naruto, don't worry, Shikamaru chuckled. Good, the blonde growled. I don't want you going soft. And then they were outside. Shikamaru turned to his father, who had followed them from the door where he had been listening. Sorry we can't finish our game, Dad. Shikaka shrugged. We'll play again tonight after dinner. Shikamaru nodded. You're on. See you, Dad. He waved at his father and the rest of the genin, and then he was off, making for his meeting with Asuma. Coming around a tree, Shino saw that Kurenai was facing Hinata again. He reclaimed his position leaning on the tree as quietly as he could, but unfortunately, Kiba's nose couldn't be fooled. "Shino, you're back," he said. "What was that all about? Why are you all closeted with Shikamaru these days?" "Project," Shino said. "He's come up with ideas for a few jutsu ideal for an aburame, and he wants me to help him out with them." This was the story they'd agreed on. Kiba just grunted. "Then what was up with Naruto and Sasuke?" "They're working with him too, on something similar," Shino said. "He's been reading a lot of scrolls on jutsu creation lately." "If you say so," Kiba muttered doubtfully. Shino had already expected that. Gullible was one thing that Kiba was not. But without evidence, the aburame doubted Kiba would act on mere suspicions for a while. "Ah, Shino, you're back," Kurenai said. "Good. It's time we got started on today's missions." Shino nodded. "D-ranks?" "D-ranks, D-ranks, and look," Kiba mumbled. "More D-ranks." Hinata stifled a giggle, and Kiba grinned at her. Poor boy, Shino thought, considering the Inuzuka. He doesn't stand a chance. As expected, he said aloud. "Let's go." They made for the Hokage's tower then. Sarutobi greeted them upon entrance with a smile and a nod to Kurenai. "I assume you're here for your mission?" "Yes, Hokage-sama," Kurenai said respectfully. "What can we do?" "Well, there are a couple D-ranks to choose from," Sarutobi said, leaning back and shuffling papers on his desk before pulling out 3 D-rank mission statements. "Let me see," he murmured, and then a wicked grin spread across his face. "We have a mission to retrieve a cat by the name of Tora." "No!" shouted Kiba in a panic. "Not Tora!" Hinata was mumbling agreement feebly, even Kurenai seemed to be nodding in grudging agreement. Shino, personally, didn't much care. "Leave that to the sadistic sensei," said Kurenai. "Like, oh, say Kakashi." Sarutobi laughed. "Very well. I'm sure he will be most pleased." He looked down at the other 2 missions. "There are 2 more. A sewage line in the southwest quarter of the village has gotten backed up, and the library needs to be sorted." "Library," said Kurenai immediately. Sarutobi smiled. "Very well." He handed her the mission statement. "In that case, report to the library. The presiding librarian will give you further instructions." "Very well," Kurenai nodded. "Thank you, Hokage-sama." And they filed out, making for the library. "Why didn't we go to the sewers?" Kiba moaned. Shino rolled his eyes. "I mean," the Inuzuka muttered, "it might have smelled bad, but at least it would have been quick. And that has a point. Why does every book need to be sorted?" "It's so people can find the books they're looking for, Kiba-kun," said Hinata timidly. "I know that," Kiba complained, picking up another book from the pile. "But couldn't we at least sort all of the books in one way, instead of sorting fun stuff by author and boring stuff by these weird numbers?" "Fiction, non-fiction, and Dewey Decimal Call number," Shino grunted. "If you're going to whine, Kiba, at least get the terms correct." "Well, fiction's fun, non-fiction isn't, and the downer decimals are weird numbers," Kiba muttered, searching the aisles for a spot. "My point stands." Kurenai laughed. "He's got you there, Shino." "Professionalism, sensei," Shino sighed, but even he couldn't remain perfectly stoic. He chuckled slightly as he picked up another book. "Nonfiction, 378.292, he thought, reading the label on the binding. "Of course it's on the other side of the building." He made his way over to a particularly dusty aisle, located 378.291 and 378.293, and placed the book between them. Then he noticed the title of a nearby book. The Lost Rituals Gates of Time was on the binding, and Shino could hazard quite a good guess as to what it contained. For a moment, Shino was struck by a horrible fear at the realization that here was a lead anyone could find toward the truth, but it was overcome quickly by an uncontrollable urge to laugh. "It's in the library," he thought, just barely holding in his own mirth. "All this time, it was sitting in the library. You've got to be kidding me." The joke still hadn't lost its novelty when they finished the mission and headed for a restaurant to have dinner as a team. Of course, he'd have to report it to Shikamaru. The Nara would have a plan of how to prevent the information getting to the wrong hands. But he had a feeling Shikamaru would laugh long and hard before he even started thinking up a plan. Naruto painted the last few lines in his seal. It was an explosive this time, but this would have an electric discharge rather than the flaming inferno common in explosive tags. He'd have to see about getting it patented and mass-produced. He leaned back in his chair for a moment, then stood and stretched. It was late. He and Sasuke had returned to Kakashi after their meeting with Shikamaru and Shino, trained for a short time, and then the team had gone into a ridiculous mission involving unclogging a sewer, of all things. Kakashi truly was a sadistic sensei. Naruto chuckled to himself as he changed into his night clothes. He felt a strange sense of peace as he tucked himself in. Shikamaru and Shino were here. Sasuke was beside him. And he was certain Gaara was already working to make everything better on his end. Kakashi was willing to help them. Sakura was already improving. Sasuke was relearning his morals. And Hinata was alive. A slow grin spread across his face. Everything's going well, isn't it? He thought to Kurama. Don't get complacent, the Kyuubi warned. There are thousands of things that could go wrong at any moment. Don't be a downer, Naruto laughed. How many of them are likely? Kurama didn't answer for a moment. A lot more of them than you think, Kit. Madara is Madara, no matter how much you've changed. Maybe, Naruto thought. But this time, we're ready for him. Are we, Naruto? Kurama wondered openly. Are we really? Naruto closed his eyes. If we think we're not, we've already lost half the battle. A/N and that's that. That's probably going to be the last of Naruto we see this arc. Next chapter we'll tie up the last few loose ends, and then I'll take a couple weeks off for revision. Then we'll head into the second arc, the Wave arc. I can't wait. Review please. First, revision notes. These are two interesting points that have come to my attention that might warrant a little explanation. They're not particularly important, but one of them has been pointed out by a reviewer. Here they are. Leave that to the sadistic sensei, said Kurenai. Like oh, say Kakashi. Sensei here is plural. The word senseis doesn't exist. If sensei is singular, the phrases don't fit together. Chapter 23 Resolution. Nara Shikamaru, said Hiruzen Sarutobi, inclining his head. How may I be of service? Shikamaru sighed, massaging his temples. There are two things you can do for me. First, and more importantly, you can let Hatake Kakashi know that I told you all this, and second, you can forget what I'm about to say after you've done so. The Sandaime cocked his head. I'm afraid I don't follow. I don't expect you to actually forget this, Shikamaru continued as though the old man hadn't spoken, but do me a favor and don't act on it without consulting me, please. The Hokage leaned forward, and there was a look in his eyes that didn't speak to a mere genin. I don't take orders from my ninja, Shikamaru, he said quietly. Centralized power is essential. Otherwise we risk civil war. Shikamaru laughed mirthlessly. Oh, like I haven't heard that before. But you misunderstand me, Sandaime-san. He was sure he saw the man's eyes widen a fraction at the unusual honorific. I don't presume to give you orders. But I'm the only one in the world, to my knowledge, who knows the full extent of our situation and can tactically analyze it. So I must request that you view my advice as valuable for all our sakes. Hiruzen leaned back. Very well. What is it that you know which I don't? Shikamaru tossed him the book Shino had found, to all their shame, in the library. That, he said flatly. Hiruzen studied its exterior for a moment before looking back at him. You've traveled through time, he murmured. You've seen our future. No, Shikamaru corrected. I've seen a future. You should hope to Kami I haven't seen ours. Not a nice place? Hiruzen asked quietly. Shikamaru snorted. To say that is to call a supernova a barbecue. It was a nightmare. And so you come back to us now to make repairs. Sarutobi spoke softly. He was not in awe, but Shikamaru had not expected such from the Hokage. He was cool and analytical as any great leader of his kind had to be in the face of revelation, and Shikamaru felt a rush of sudden pride to be a ninja of Konoha, where all of the best Kage ruled. Yes, said Shikamaru simply. But not alone. The Sandaime frowned. You brought others? Others came, whether I brought them or not, Shikamaru shrugged. But you need to hear the story, the whole story, to understand. So I'll start at the beginning. After we genin were assigned our teams, the same teams as those we're in now, by the way, we were all put into the Chunin exams, set to be here about 6 months from now, right? Hiruzen nodded mutely. Good, Shikamaru nodded. I was the only one promoted in those exams. Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga Neji, and Uzumaki Naruto each came close. Unfortunately, the first was too unprofessional and emotionally compromised, the second too concerned with his own personal vendettas and not enough with the village, and the third a little too much of an idiot, although frankly, I think the Kyuubi's reputation had a lot to do with it. Hiruzen paled. You know about the fox? Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Obviously, since I'm talking about him. Back on track. During the exams, Suna and a new village, Oto, allied together and launched an attack on Konoha from within using the potential Chunin. During the battle, you were killed by the Otokage, Orochimaru. Hiruzen's eyes widened, but Shikamaru held up a hand. If you didn't expect him to be back, then you're not worthy of that hat. Now listen. Naruto met Jiraiya during the exams and they sought out Tsunade, who consented to take the post of Godame Hokage. During this period, Uchiha Itachi made an appearance wearing the red clouds of the Akatsuki organization, who have been even now reformed into a group of elite nin with a specific goal. More on that later. He fought Sasuke, and won emotionally compromising Sasuke in the process. That led to Sasuke defecting from the village and joining Orochimaru to gain power. Naruto was from the on driven to bring him back. To that end, he left with Jiraiya for a multi-year training trip soon afterward. Shikamaru continued the tale, telling of the attack on Suna, of the rising strength of the Akatsuki. He spoke of Orochimaru's and Itachi's deaths. He told the Hokage of the falling of the many Jinchuriki, and of Pain's invasion. He told of the 5 Kage summit, of the 4th Great Ninja War, of Killer Bee's final showdown with the agents of the Akatsuki, and of his and Shino's capture. He told of the fall of Konoha. I'd only just escaped with Shino when I heard, he said, remembering the horror that had gone like a shock through his entire being. It was horrible, knowing I should have been there. He shook his head. Anyway, the Nara have protected the ritual for as long as our history remembers. Shino and I collected the reagents for a month, and then on the ritual night used them all. And here we are. So Shino was the one who accompanied you? Hiruzen asked softly. He had, after the beginning, seemingly decided simply not to interrupt and instead to allow Shikamaru to weave the tale on his own. Shikamaru nodded. But there's more, he said. Sasuke was the one who destroyed Konoha and he took the Kazekage, Gaara. Prisoner Gaara was in the village at the time. Gaara apparently appealed to whatever better nature he had left or something, though I don't pretend to understand exactly what happened. The point is, Gaara knew about the ritual through Shikaku. He told Sasuke. Now they're both back. Hiruzen started to stand in alarm, but Shikamaru held up a placating hand. Sasuke's changed, he said quietly. Believe me. I'd never have thought it, but we all had a conference yesterday. Guilt doesn't even begin to describe what consumes him. As it well should, he added privately, thinking of contingency plan Kitsune. But that's not the point. No one's had contact with Gaara yet, but I expect he's fixing the situation in Suna as we speak. And there's one more of us time travelers, too. And who might that be? Hiruzen asked, leaning forward. Shikamaru smiled wryly. One who I am forced to be loyal to beyond even my loyalty to you, I'm afraid. But since he's perfectly loyal to you, it shouldn't be a problem. Hiruzen leaned back. Your Hokage. Shikamaru grinned. Yes, Sandaime-san. Naruto survived the fall of the village. And he's not going to let it happen again. Morning, day, and evening again. Sasuke had always liked the evening. The cooling of the air had always seemed to soothe him, even in the midst of his raging. And so now he found himself sitting out atop his roof, watching the sun set. The previous day he'd done this too, considering the allies he suddenly found himself with. Shikamaru, Shino, Naruto, Gaara, and himself. Frankly, Sasuke could scarcely even imagine a more effective team. He had found it difficult to rest, thinking of all of the possibilities opening to them even now, that he'd come out here to think on it all. But now the novelty had worn off, and he found his thoughts drawn to a particular part of the previous day's conversation. I'm only going to ask this once, the Nara growled, his rage at the insults slowly building. How much did you have to do with making that armor? Sasuke just looked at him bleakly. Too much, he murmured. Too much, indeed. Sasuke swallowed hard, the guilt rising again like bile. How had he been so blind? When had he become so twisted? He thought of himself, only a month ago. Or was it 6 months from now? He thought of the cruel, driven, weak-minded individual who had betrayed all he had ever known for a misguided vengeance. And he hated him. Sasuke suddenly found that if he went to the core of his being and tried to pinpoint the person he hated most, he found a tie between two, Danzo and himself, with Madara close behind. Sasuke suddenly chuckled. If Hiruzen Sarutobi hadn't been blocked last time by his status as clan head and the prestige of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke was sure he'd have been all too likely in an asylum for a fair part of his childhood for post-traumatic stress disorder. Sasuke almost wished the man had been able to force it on him. But a part of him whispered that he had gained too much to even consider such a thing. And he despised that part of himself for its selfishness. What right did he have to friendship, or camaraderie, or anything good in the world after all he had done? After the deaths of so many? Nothing, said a voice in his mind, and it was his own. He put his head in his hands, but did not cry. He had cried for this once already. That was enough. But then another voice spoke in his mind. Pitiful, it said. What is this, Uchiha? Self-pity? Sasuke's eyes snapped open. That was not his voice. Kurama, he greeted softly. And then he was elsewhere. He blinked in surprise at the sudden change of locale. He was seated on a gray marble throne, and looking around, he saw a great hall, a throne room, with a floor as black as night, pillars as red as blood, and walls and a ceiling like a great silver curtain over all. But the sight was not grand. The throne's back was rent into two, one of the armrests was completely absent, and the other was horribly chipped. The entire left-hand corner of the hall as he faced it had collapsed completely, leaving a pile of crumbled masonry everywhere. Many of the pillars were cracked in ways that they were completely broken and held up only by the others. The floor looked like the earth of a wasteland, cracked into 1,000 intricate pieces. It was dotted with piles of shattered rock where bits of the crumbling ceiling had fallen down. The door was of rotting mahogany, grown over with ivy and other creeping plants. And then it opened, and in stepped a small fox. A fox with 9 tails. Sasuke stood up. Kurama, he greeted again. How can you communicate with me without Naruto present? There was a reason Madara wanted you to synchronize with the demonic statue of the outer path, said Kurama in his deep voice, quite out of proportion with the small body Sasuke could see. The Uchiha have always been quite attuned to our kind, myself in particular. It's why you can control me. So why didn't Madara synchronize himself? Sasuke frowned. The rituals don't work like that, first off, the Kyuubi grunted. And secondly, Madara is a special case. Sasuke shrugged and changed the subject. If the fox wanted to be non-committal, Sasuke wouldn't pry. He had no place to. Where are we? The Kyuubi didn't answer at once. He looked around, contemplating the ancient room, his eyes lingering on the broken back of Sasuke's throne. Then he chuckled softly, almost sadly. This makes Naruto's mind look like a well-kept garden by comparison. Sasuke's eyes widened. This is my mind, he said, and it wasn't a question. Oh yes, Kurama replied anyway. I've seldom seen one so poorly kept. Sasuke glared at him for a moment, and then looked down. I'm just a repository for psychoses, aren't I? In many ways, I suppose so, said Kurama frankly. I wonder if you've seen the back of your throne? Sasuke turned, and saw that the great crack in the seat was cut directly through the center of Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan eye. He looked away quickly. Why am I here? We need to talk, the Kyuubi said flatly. I can't have you wallowing in self-loathing anymore. Your first serious missions are coming. Sasuke sat back down, and then stood up. He wasn't sure he wanted to sit against Itachi's broken eye. Would it be better if I didn't regret all I've done? No, Kurama chuckled. But think. What has been lost by your actions? Nothing now, said Sasuke, thanks to that ritual. But I still did it. He turned away again, looking at the shattered chair. I killed them, he whispered. All of them. Yes, said the Kyuubi matter-of-factly. You did. And it's time to make amends. Sasuke turned to look at him, but the fox was no longer watching him. He was looking about the room. I could tell you what most of this symbolizes, he said softly, but I don't think I need to. Sasuke shook his head, watching the fox in silence. Kurama turned back to him. Think, boy, he said. How does wallowing in this hatred of yourself fix anything? How does this alter who you are or were? How does this fix the world? Sasuke looked down. It doesn't. Then what does? Kurama pressed quietly. You should know better than this, Uchiha. Hatred never solved anything. And he was right, the Uchiha reflected as the throne room faded from his sight. He was back on his roof now. He stood up and looked as the sun set, leaving the world in darkness. Sasuke had always liked the evening. The cooling of the air had always seemed to soothe him, even in the midst of his raging. But now, perhaps, passion was what he needed. The passion to achieve redemption, to protect, and be protected, to be a part of a group of nothing more or less than friends. Naruto's passion, really, now that was what he needed. He had always liked the evening, but now, after many years, his heart went out to the morning, and the breaking of the dawn. Feeling changed, he leapt down from the roof onto his porch. He slid open his front door, entered his home, and closed it again. It was late, and time to sleep. Arc 2. Chapter 24 Review. You're certain? Shikamaru asked, one brow raised. I don't see that it matters too much. Naruto shrugged. It matters to me. The three of them, Naruto, Sasuke, and Shikamaru, were seated in Shikamaru's private study, rather than borrowing Shikaku's hall. For the past month, the two pairs had been operating separately, but little had been done in that time. However, they now approached, in Naruto's opinion, the first of many divergence points. And he therefore had come to speak with Shikamaru. For in less than a week, Tazuna would be in the village, and a C-rank mission would be authorized to escort him. And Naruto had every intention of taking the job. Shikamaru shrugged, turning to the other boy. What do you think of this, Sasuke? Sasuke rolled his eyes. I think it's utterly pointless, he grumbled. We're already taking C ranks, so the pay boost isn't an issue. Naruto's obsessing over the idea that he can save Momoichi's henchman, Haku. It's A rank, Sasuke, Naruto grumbled. We'll get paid 3 times as much. If you'd ever bothered to pay attention last time, Sasuke countered, you know that the council refused to pay for that mission more than for a C rank on the grounds that it was completed without authorization, which is true. Like I said, no pay boost. Sasuke's right. Shikamaru cut in before Naruto could answer. I remember looking into the debate when we were overthrowing the Hyuga, looking for ways to discredit Hayashi. So, he cocked his head at Naruto. Why do you want to take this one? Naruto's shoulders slumped, and he looked away. It was the first real mission we took, he said quietly. It defined user at least for years afterward. I don't want to miss it. And, he looked at Shikamaru out of the corner of his eye, it'll give me a chance to succeed where I failed last time. And what happens when you fail again? Shikamaru asked softly. Naruto's head whipped to face him, glowering. Some things can't change, Naruto, he told the blonde would-be Hokage. What makes you think you can turn aside from the road at every corner? Because if we can't, then we shouldn't even be here, Naruto ground out through gritted teeth. We have to try everything we can, Shikamaru. You know this, why are you asking me? The more we change for the better our chances become. Shikamaru smirked slightly. Good, you're actually thinking instead of acting on instinct. I'll get the mission for you. Naruto blinked. What? Shikamaru chuckled. I have nothing against you taking the mission. I just had to make sure it was for the right reasons. You're right, of course. Here he glanced at Sasuke for a moment as he said, the destination is the sum of the journey. Sasuke frowned, recognizing that he was being preached to but not grasping the meaning. He'll work it out, Shikamaru thought. He's smart. Now get going, you two, the Nara heir ordered. I've got an appointment with the Sandang to set up. Naruto nodded, stood, and stretched. You got it, he said, grinning. Come on, Sasuke. Let's leave the guy to his important work. Sasuke rolled his eyes as he stood. See you, Shikamaru, he nodded cordially. Later, Sasuke, murmured the Nara. Naruto stopped just outside Shikamaru's door, rolling his shoulders. Sasuke stopped beside him, watching him. "What's up?" the Uchiha asked. Naruto shook his head with a slight grin. "That guy always puts me off my balance, that's all." "You think you've got trouble," muttered Sasuke. "At least he likes you." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Come on. It's almost 7. Don't want to keep Sakura waiting." And the two made off down the road at a trot. They reached the training ground with a minute to spare, but their teammate was already there. She waved at them, but didn't move, and Naruto saw that she was in the middle of a form. He smiled slightly at that. "Hey Sasuke, could you watch me run through this form?" Sakura asked as they came up to her. "I'm not sure about one point in the middle." "Hey Naruto." "Hey Sakura," he said with a grin. "Sure," Sasuke told her. "Naruto tied just to spar after I'm done?" "You're on." Naruto treated the Uchiha to a thumbs up and headed off to a corner of the field to start his training routine. Sakura watched in awe as her two teammates sparred. They never used ninjutsu, for some reason, but their taijutsu was stunning. She felt frankly that fate had given her an automatic victory over Ino in all competitions simply because she could observe this almost every morning. Sasuke moved like a snake, or a bird. He was never where Naruto struck, always quick and striking with a deadly precision. But if Sasuke was a serpent, then Naruto was a lion. If Sakura had been told 2 months ago that she would be admiring Naruto's skill and power in combat almost as much as Sasuke's, she'd have laughed at them. And then tried to burn them at the stake for sacrilege. The blonde boy utilized nothing like Sasuke's graceful, elegant techniques, opting instead for a much more simplistic but for him, no less effective stratagem of simply rushing his opponent with such quick and repetitive power and stamina that even Sasuke was barely able to hold his own. And that was only for the first 20 minutes of combat. They scarcely ever fully finished a spar while Sakura was present, or indeed at all, but from those she had seen in full, Naruto almost always won. It wasn't that he was more skilled technically, quite the contrary. Sasuke's technique was flawless while his would make any traditionalist martial sensei wince, but simply a matter of stamina. Sasuke, for all his glorious abilities, was not tireless, while Naruto seemingly was. Sakura had only seen Sasuke win one of their spars, and that had been in the first 5 minutes of combat. Any later, and Sasuke would be too tired to go on a full offensive. Sakura felt privileged to be on a team with these two. But if she had one complaint, it was simply that she felt unnecessary. She almost never took part in any sort of combat with the team that was all up to her teammates. Her only valid contribution was her mind and tactical planning. Admittedly, though, that had helped them considerably on many a mission. She'd been watching for 3 full minutes, a long time by a fight's measurements, when she realized she was supposed to be working on a form. Sighing ruefully, she reluctantly turned away from the two boys and got back into her stance. "Are you sure this is wise, Shikamaru?" Shino asked his comrade quietly. He was following the Nara to the Hokage's office where Shikamaru intended to request a specific mission for Team 7. "Why wouldn't it be?" the Nara heir asked nonchalantly. Shino glared at him under his sunglasses. "Shikamaru, if something goes wrong, it could ruin everything. Why are we taking pointless risks?" "I'm not sure you understand the nature of our mission, Shino," Shikamaru said suddenly, whirling to face him. Shino blinked. "What do you mean?" Shikamaru sighed. "The very nature of our mission requires risk-taking. The whole purpose is to take all the deadly risks from before sooner now that we're better prepared for them. In addition, we want to achieve greater success against all our more temporal risks. Such as, for instance, Naruto's mission to the Land of Waves." Shino cocked his head at him. "Shouldn't we conserve every element of surprise we have for the really important tasks, though? Shouldn't we hide our full strength from the outside world?" Shikamaru shook his head. "Impossible. We have Naruto." Hiruzen was just authorizing a massive stack of D-ranked missions when Shikamaru came in. He looked up and nodded to the genin, though perhaps the rank was erroneous. "Shikamaru," he greeted cordially. Once, he would have added the suffix kun, but he had a feeling the Nara would not appreciate the gesture, so he had taken to speaking to the boy as he would any adult ninja. Because, after all, that was exactly what the boy was. "Sandame-san," Shikamaru returned with a deferential nod but not a bow, because Hiruzen was not, after all, his Hokage. What brings you here today? The Sarutobi elder asked, leaning back in his chair, eager for an excuse to ease up on the D-rank authorizations. There was more of Torah, unfortunately. He pitied the poor genin. Advice, Shikamaru said? Or a request? Take it as you will. The Hokage nodded. I see. What might it be? There will be a mission from Wentazuna, a bridge builder, in less than a week, Shikamaru said flatly. The mission, a C rank, should be given to Team 7. Hiruzen frowned, looking at his desk. That mission was just requested, he began. Good, Shikamaru grunted. I recommend you assign it to Naruto and Sasuke's team. But it's not a C rank, Hiruzen finished, looking at Shikamaru pointedly for the interruption. The payment was for C rank, but upon further examination, it was determined that an A rank was more correct. Tazuna is in the village and will receive the notification today. Shikamaru stepped back, looking surprised and perturbed. Why? He asked quickly. Why was it re-ranked? Hiruzen frowned. He didn't even need to look at the paper to reply. Because of the presence of a high-threat S-rank missing nin in the vicinity of the Land of Waves, of course. Was he not present before? Shikamaru's eyes widened. What missing nin? Hiruzen studied him for a moment. He's a relatively recent phenomenon, he said, watching the Nara's face for any odd reaction he wasn't sure what. His kill count is relatively low, as yet none of Konoha. But several detachments from other villages in the vicinity of Wave have recently been cut down by a mysterious armored ninja. He's taken out a full 3-man squad of A and BU from Suna already. Shikamaru stared at him, his mouth slightly ajar and his eyes wide. Are there any descriptions of the armor as of yet? Yes, 3 eyewitnesses have survived encounters with this ninja, Hiruzen said, opening a bingo book on his desk and flipping through the pages until he found the most recent edition. There was nothing more than a sketch where a photograph should go, but there was a description. He read it aloud. Armor is silver. Mask appears skull-like. No skin shows. Blue lenses where the eye would normally be apparent. Small red insignia on pectoral as yet unidentified. He looked up at Shikamaru and was surprised to see the boy shaking, eyes closed. His face was perfectly blank, and Hiruzen could not tell if he was shivering for shock, or fear, or rage, or some mixture of all 3. Shikamaru? He asked softly. We will continue this conversation another time, Shikamaru murmured. I need to consult with my allies. And then he was out the door at a run. Hello, children, Kakashi said happily, leaping into their midst. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto grinned, giving the Jounin a thumbs up. They'd just been starting to work together on forms, and Naruto, who despised forms with a passion, was extremely pleased to have an opportunity not to do them. Time to get a mission? Yes, said Kakashi. Come on. Good work on the forms, by the way, Sakura, he added, treating the pink-haired girl to an eye smile. You're really improving. She blushed and ducked her head. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. It's all thanks to Sasuke's help, though. The greatest teacher can't teach a student who doesn't want to learn, Sasuke said, shrugging. And I'm far from the best. Loving the bonding and all, said a voice overhead, but there are more important issues. Shikamaru jumped down into their midst. His eyes met Sasuke's and held them. He didn't even look at Naruto. I need a word with Naruto and Sasuke, Kakashi-sensei, he said quietly. Now, please. Fine, said Kakashi, shrugging. Don't kill them. No promises, said Shikamaru, and Naruto shuddered inside at the deadly seriousness of his voice. What was wrong? Come on, you two, said Shikamaru, gesturing with his head to the thicker woods behind him. They followed him into the trees. He led them until Naruto judged they were about out of earshot from Kakashi and Sakura, if they spoke normally. Then he stopped, and they did too, behind him. Sasuke, Shikamaru said softly. I want an explanation. And then he had spun and pushed the Uchiha against a tree, their noses nearly touching, and the Nara had a kunai against Sasuke's gut. Sasuke spluttered. What? What are you doing? Hey! Naruto shouted. Get off of him! Quiet! Hissed Shikamaru, eyes flicking over to glare at the blonde. Turning his attention back to Sasuke, he whispered threateningly, You need prompting? Fine. There had better be a damn good explanation, Sasuke, for the fact that contingency Kitsune is wandering around killing people near the land of waves. Sasuke's eyes grew wide, and no one could mistake his expression for anything other than it was shocked horror. What? He murmured brokenly. Chapter 25 Reorganization. You've heard me, Shikamaru hissed, real fury in his eyes. I just got back from the Sandaime office. The wave mission has been raised to B rank, because of the presence of an S-rank missing Nin active in that area. He's already killed the Suna A and BU squad off. And he's wearing armor that perfectly matched what I saw in Madara's lair. I want an explanation. Now. I don't know, I swear, Sasuke said in what the small part of his mind that was thinking rationally realized was an almost childlike display of shocked horror. But the greater part of his mind was busy getting weak at the knees with the weight of that very emotion. They didn't have him. You know they didn't have him. It makes no sense. You didn't have him. Shikamaru snarled in his face viciously, and Sasuke felt as though his heart was tearing at the confirmation of his guilt. You're one of them. You were one of them from the moment you abandoned Konoha for Orochimaru. And then the Nara had been launched sideways by kick, courtesy of Naruto, who now stood between them, glaring at Shikamaru's prone form. I'll say this once, Captain Hawk, said Naruto, quietly and forcefully. You will not consider Sasuke to be one of our enemies again, verbally or otherwise, until he gives evidence that he is so. Is that clear? Shikamaru looked USP at him with hooded eyes for a moment, and then sighed ruefully. Sometimes I forget why you are our Hokage, Naruto, he murmured. My apologies. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't, Naruto grunted. Now, I'd really like to know what's going on. The armor Sasuke helped Madara make is in the land of waves on a missing Nin, Shikamaru explained. Whoever it is has killed 4 Suna and BU who came across it. The mission to wave is set at B rank. As a result, it'd be higher if this missing Nin was seeking confrontation. Whoever it is. Sasuke shuddered slightly. After a moment, however, he recollected himself. That doesn't make sense, he told himself. There must be another explanation. But he's not seeking confrontation? Naruto asked Shikamaru. No, Shikamaru said simply. But his very presence is extremely unsettling. How did he get here? Or more importantly, how did the armor get here? Naruto shook his head. Turning to Sasuke, he asked, Did Madara ever show any artistic tendencies? Sasuke blinked. No. Why? Then he couldn't have designed the armor himself, Naruto concluded. We have no proof the missing Nin wasn't present last time, and the armor design must have come from somewhere. Since the chances were all rerolled, he must have just decided to go to wave this time when he didn't last time. Shikamaru blinked. That actually makes good sense, or something like it. When did you get inclined to figure out how the theory behind all of this worked? Naruto shrugged. Around when it started having anything to do with me. Now, can you get us the mission? Shikamaru seemed to think for a minute, and then a wicked smile crossed his features. The Sandaime won't allow one team of genin to take this, even yours, he said quietly. His decision would be too questioned, and at best it'd make people suspicious. But perhaps he'd allow 2 teams. Naruto grinned. So you're coming with us? Oh no, Shikamaru started laughing. I'm Need in Konoha. No, I was thinking Team 8. And then he was gone. Sasuke saw Naruto's face slacken. He heard the blonde whisper, Hinata-chan, thickly to himself. Sasuke didn't mind the moment's respite for introspection. He couldn't help but continue to feel worried. It was true, after all, that Madara had no creative talent. But Deidara and Sasori did. Konan too. Even Pain and Zetsu had some. So it couldn't be said that Akatsuki, at its height, had had a shortage of creativity. But Madara had meant that armor for one man in particular. He'd never let anyone else wear it. Would he? After considering, we've thought up a valid explanation for the missing Nin's presence, said Shikamaru. The Sandaime motioned for him to continue, leaning back at his desk. We believe that he was, in fact, present last time, that because of the rerolled chances, he has surfaced in the land of waves rather than elsewhere this time. Hiruzen nodded. Very well, Shikamaru, he nodded. What do you suggest I do? I recommend 2 genin teams be sent on the mission to wave, Shikamaru said. For multiple reasons. First, sending a squad of Jounin on a B-ranked mission is nonsensical and would be questioned. Second, we do want to apprehend this missing Nin. He has destroyed members of Suna ANBU, and if we can take him down, and perhaps give them a portion of the reward as consolation for their losses, it would strengthen our ever-friendlier bonds. We went to war with them in the near future last time, didn't we? Hiruzen interrupted grimly. A very brief and nearly harmless war, but yes, nodded Shikamaru. In any case, a squad of Chunin with no Jounin backup is not advisable for that aim. The logical conclusion would be to send squads of weaker ninja genin, the obvious choice to complete the core mission with stronger ninja their Jounin sensei to take out the missing Nin, should he appear. But one squad of genin to take a B-rank mission is nonsensical. And one Jounin might prove insufficient in any case. Hiruzen was smiling now. You make a shrewd politician, Shikamaru-san. I know, Shikamaru thought, not missing the new honorific. I needed it all to pass off the engagement of Konoha's and Suna's main ambassadors to one another as a politically advantageous move. But all he said aloud was, "Thank you, Sandaime-san." But wait, said the old Sarutobi. Why would two of our Jounin be able to take out a missing Nin that has defeated a squad of Suna ANBU? Shikamaru smirked. I advise you to play up the Sharingan politically, but you know as well as I do what the real power behind the team is. So, for this mission, I'll be assigning teams 7 and 10, correct? Hiruzen asked, beginning to write on the mission scroll. No, said Shikamaru quickly. I need to be here in the village, Sandaime-san. I'm our group's tactician. Send team 8 instead. Hiruzen nodded slowly but didn't continue writing. I just realize you haven't yet addressed the problem of payment, he said. Is Tazuna going to be able to pay for a B-rank mission in any case? No, Shikamaru shrugged. But how much will it cost to increase the mission's rank? Hiruzen looked down at his paperwork to check. 200 ryo. Shikamaru opened his wallet, counted its contents, sighed, and poured it out onto Hiruzen's desk. That should foot it, he said. I'll get Naruto to pay me back for part of it. We thank you for your business, Tazuna-san, the Hokage said. Tazuna nodded, squinting at him. If he had known he'd be called back to the man's office again today, he'd have refrained from drinking any sake until the meeting was over. Unfortunately, they'd surprised him with this, and so he was already drunk to the point where he was absolutely certain he was embarrassing his homeland with his slurred speech. "That's no problem," he mumbled. "Need your help?" Hiruzen nodded. Unfortunately, the mission you requested has been raised in rank to B grade on the grounds of a missing Nin's known presence near Wave. Missing Nin? Takuna blurted without thinking, then clamped his mouth shut hard. B rank was for the presence of a missing Nin. If they knew that Tazuna himself was being gunned for, it'd be even higher. B rank, he might just be able to manage, given a little time. Yes, said the Hokage. Fortunately, a benefactor who opted to remain anonymous has paid the increased costs. Tazuna grinned. Oh, good. Then he frowned. Wait. What if as someone trying to lure me to the missing Nin? The Hokage smiled. Don't worry, he assured Tazuna. I know the source personally. I have complete faith in his loyalty. K. Tazuna muttered. So when do we leave? In a few days, the Hokage said. I will be sure to notify you in advance, so that you can sober up. Tazuna flushed. Sorry. As hard. To be away from home for so long? The Hokage asked softly. Tazuna nodded woefully. Especially when they need me. This is most unwise, Hiruzen, Mitokado Hamura said quietly. The village elders were having tea with the Hokage to discuss various village affairs including, in this case, Tazuna's mission to the Land of Waves. He and Koharu were in perfect agreement on this point, sending 2 genin squads on a B-rank mission paid partly by a benefactor who Hiruzen still refused to name, made absolutely no sense. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair. Allow me to explain my reasoning, then, he said quietly without looking at either of them. Hamura frowned at this show of disassociation. For nearly 2 months, Hiruzen had become startlingly distant from his 2 former teammates. It was as though they'd done something to alienate him. But he simply nodded to the Hokage and waited for his explanation. Suna has recently lost multiple ANBU agents to the mysterious missing Nin near Wave Country, Hiruzen said. They would be grateful were we to give them his or her head. Do you agree? Hamura nodded, waiting for the other man to get to the point. Beside him, Kohara sighed in impatience. So the Chunin squad expected for a B-rank mission makes no sense if that is our unspoken aim, said Hiruzen. We need Jounin. But we cannot send a squad of Jounin on a B-rank mission. It looks illogical and other villages would think us frightened. But Genin? Kohara asked, exasperated. Hiruzen, you're the one who is so ridiculously overprotective of the children. What are you thinking? The Genin will finish the core objective of the mission, which is little more than a C-rank escort, Hiruzen spoke quietly, but his authority topped the woman's words. Meanwhile, the Jounin will be on hand to capture or kill the missing Nin, should he or she appear. This missing Nin has destroyed a full squad of Suna and Biu, Hamura said softly. Yuhi Kurinai only recently made Jounin. Kakashi Hatake has the precious Sharingan, Hiruzen countered. You and Danzo were so afraid of it that we destroyed all but 3 of its known bearers, and though I still think that was an erroneous decision, you were right to fear. The Sharingan is dangerous. Hatake's ninjutsu is nigh and unrivaled, and Yuhi has similar standing in genjutsu. There is, after all, a reason she was able to become one of the 5 youngest Jounin sensei in Konoha history despite the widespread prejudice against kunoichi. They are capable. What I failed to understand, said a new voice behind Hamura as the door opened, is why we should be expending our resources to destroy an enemy of Suna. Danzo, said Hiruzen without inflection. This is a meeting between the 2 village elders and myself. I count 3 people who should be in this room now. You are not one of them. Hamura's eyes widened slightly. Hiruzen had never dismissed Danzo so offhandedly before. What was happening to him? Kohara was clearly extremely surprised as well. How dare you dismiss Danzo-san so quickly? She said loudly. He has ever given us valuable counsel. Counsel to war, yes, Hiruzen said, and though his voice never rose, and he didn't release even an ounce of killer intent, the room seemed to grow colder. The Hokage stood, and Hamura had not seen so much power into the Hokage's aged form since they were young and fought side by side in battle. How dare I? He asked softly. How dare you, Danzo? Hiruzen gestured to Hamura and Koharu. They were my teammates, he said softly. We fought and bled together. We fought and bled with you, too, but if your blood is not black by now, I am most surprised. Hiruzen turned away, looking out the window. They were my friends, he said, and Hamura felt an odd chill go down his spine. But your eye has seen into their minds, and now those minds see out of that very eye. Hamura distinctly saw Danzo stiffen ever so slightly. What are you suggesting? The old warmonger asked softly. Exactly what you know to be true, said Hiruzen, still quietly but now with a concentrated force. You cannot turn its gaze on me, I will find it. But they are open. Well, no more. I cannot prove anything yet, but I have the means to find that evidence. The only reason I have not yet utilized them is because your blood belongs to another, and I will not steal what is his. Go. Do not deceive yourself into thinking my threats are empty. Do not come before me as an advisor again, and do not manipulate my teammates. I will know if you do. Danzo stood still for a moment, and then turned, making to leave the room without a word. And one more thing, said Hiruzen quietly. Don't turn your little band of human kunai against any of us either. I assure you, I will know. Danzo didn't even turn around as he left. Hiruzen fell back into his chair tiredly. My apologies, he said to them both. Please don't ask me what I was talking about. Hamura frowned. Why, might I ask? I think if Danzo is as much a threat as you seem to believe, we should know. Hiruzen shook his head. If he is a threat to the village, then it is because I have just made him so. He is a psychopath, perhaps, but until now he was one not turned against the village. And if he is now, I am confident in my ability to contain him. But why do you suddenly hate him so? Kohara asked. Hiruzen sighed. That is not my secret to divulge. He looked at each of them in turn. In the event of my death, I want you to promise me never to elect Danzo as the Hokage. They both nodded slowly. I hope you'll explain this one day, Kohara said softly. Hiruzen smiled ruefully at her. I sincerely hope I never have to. Now, the mission to Wave will be as I have said. If I have not yet convinced you, I never will, and I am quite certain on this point. I am too tired to argue further now, in any case. Is there more to discuss? Yes, said Hamura, standing. But it can wait for tomorrow. He put a hand on Hiruzen's shoulder. Whatever the secret is, you don't have to bear it alone, old friend. Hiruzen smiled weakly at him, and all of the authoritative power that had been in him was gone. Hamura was struck by just how old his teammate was. None of us have much longer to live, perhaps, he thought. But dying of old age is the death of a very powerful shinobi, after all. I'm not the one bearing it, Hamura, he said softly. I'm just helping them out. Chapter 26 Realignment. Kakashi looked at the man blankly. Hokage-sama, if you don't mind my asking. Why? Hiruzen sighed. I've gone over my reasoning too many times in the past 2 days as it is, but if you insist. No, said Kakashi quickly. The old man had visibly sagged at the prospect of explaining. I'll figure it out eventually. Just tell me what I need to know. The Sandaime nodded gratefully. All right. It's a joint mission, which is why both of you are here. Here the Hokage nodded to both Kakashi and Yuhi Kurenai beside him. The mission is have very particular reason for assigning it to Genin, believe me. Kakashi nodded, willing to accept that much information for now, but Kurenai frowned. Hokage-sama. Will this be a serious threat to my team? The Sandaime shook his head. Given all the circumstances, I don't expect so. The original mission was C rank. It was raised due to the presence of a relatively unassuming S rank missing nin in the area, which is the reason for the 2 Jounin-headed squads. Kakashi raised his one visible eyebrow. So let me guess. We have our spoken mission objectives for the Genin, while the 2 of us keep our eyes open for this missing nin? Precisely, agreed the old man. Be warned, however, he's a fairly recent phenomenon, but we know he's eliminated a squad of Suna A and BU low importance, not one of the high-profile groups. We want to be able to give them his head on a silver platter, but it's more important that everyone going on the mission survive. Respectfully, Sandaime-sama, began Kurenai, looking worried. Why am I being sent on this mission? I'm one of the newest Jounin. Surely a more experienced ninja is better suited to something like this? Hiruzen looked at her appraisingly. You're also the greatest genjutsu specialist the village has to offer, he said. Kakashi is our ninjutsu specialist. Ideally I would send Maito-gai with you as well, thus completing the triad of ninja talents, but 3 Jounin on a B-rank mission is illogical. Perhaps after this, if the missing nin is not captured, I will send a squad of Jounin to take him down. In the meantime, this is our lineup. Surely, though, Asuma would be a better choice? Asked Kurenai. He's much more experienced than I am and he has a more powerful reputation. He's a ninjutsu specialist like me, though, Kakashi answered for the Hokage. You're a genjutsu user. Much less expected, and therefore more effective. Well, Maito-gai, then? Kurenai looked very worried. She's terrified for her team, Kakashi thought. It's her first squad, and she's terrified of failing the kids. Suddenly he realized something. It's my first team too. But then again, he should be more worried about his students failing than him. Sasuke and Naruto could probably each kill him, if their stories were anything to go by. His team is occupied elsewhere, a prolonged C rank near the border with Kumo, the Hokage explained. You're the clear choice. Can't abide to be on a mission with me, Kurenai? Kakashi joked quietly. She glared at him, but he met her eyes steadily, trying to convey a silent message to her. Don't worry, he said wordlessly. I won't let anything happen to any of you. And nor will my team, he added to himself as he turned back to the Hokage. No, of course not, said Kurenai after a moment, and Kakashi had a feeling she'd gotten the message. I'm just not sure I'm ready for a mission of such importance. I'm certain you are, Kurenai, said Hiruzen simply. Now, on to the details. The spoken mission is as follows. You and your teams are to escort the bridge builder Tizuna to his home in the Land of Waves and protect him while he finishes his bridge there. Unofficially, you're taking down this missing nin. Do not, I repeat, do not actively seek him out, not while you have Genin. If he comes, the Genin are the priority. This is his description, or what we have of it. The Hokage passed them each a page, likely copied from the most recent bingo book. Kakashi studied it, especially the image. The man on it was about average height, but given the heavy, silvery armor he was wearing, his actual height was likely slightly less. No part of his actual body could be seen. His chest plate was adorned with a diagonal row of metal cylinders from his left shoulder to right hip, each containing a scroll. The back plate was littered with a network of spikes pointing downward reminiscent of the Sannin Jiraiya's signature needle Jizo. The shoulders were smooth and curved like ovals meeting in vicious points past his arms. His legs relatively as expected, with metal pseudo-cylinders hugging the thigh and lower leg. The kneecaps were spiked, with a solitary point aimed upwards, and the toes of the boots curved down like shard talons. The arms and helm were the most remarkable features. The elbows extended outward almost to blades longer than a normal kunai by half at least. The gauntlets looked deadly, with spiked knuckles, fingers made of rings locked together, each curving into a point facing back and ending in points, and spurs on the backs. The lower arms were adorned with an array of scroll-holding cylinders like those on the chest which looked to be able to revolve around the arm. Below these there was on each arm a smooth, flat cylinder around the arm, and around this was wrapped another scroll, a storage scroll, by the seals Kakashi could see. The helm was adorned with spikes rather like a crown, and the mask was fashioned like a skull, with blue lenses in place of a visor. All in all, Kakashi had never seen a more threatening-looking suit of armor in his life, but he knew better than to get afraid over such a thing. It was not the armor but the wearer which was the threat. After he'd studied the image to his satisfaction, he turned to the other details. His eyes widened. Topping the list of the missing Nin's known jutsu was Minato-sensei's Rasengan. He immediately skipped back up to the name, which he'd largely ignored up then. The ninja called himself the Dishonored. And now Kakashi did fear him. At least a little. "Hello, children," said Kakashi, smiling with his eye as he leapt down from the trees into their midst. Naruto grinned at him. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Mission?" "Yup," nodded the Jounin. "Special assignment direct from the Hokage." Wave, thought Naruto happily. It had been almost a week since Shikamaru had requested the mission. It was about time it got assigned. "The Hokage requested that we do a mission?" Sakura asked in awe. "As in, us specifically?" Kakashi smiled at her with his eye. "Yes, Sakura. It's a joint mission with Team 8. B rank with specialist parameters." "B rank?" Sakura asked in shock. In the same instant, Sasuke grunted, "Specialist parameters?" Kakashi nodded. "It's B rank, but it requires Jounin attention to occult specifics, so instead of sending the standard Chunin squad, they're sending in 2 Genin teams with their Jounin sensei." Sasuke nodded, and Naruto knew he didn't need to ask what the situation that required Jounin attention was. It's that missing Nin, Naruto thought. Who the hell is he? "Anyway, we're to report to the Hokage's tower immediately for our assignment," Kakashi said. "Come on." And they were off. Shino's eyes opened as soon as his insects informed him the Kurenai had come into the clearing, but other than that he made no move at all. He'd been meditating, allowing his hives to grow as much as he could, given his limited time with Hinata and Kiba sparred. He watched his teammates for a moment. They were both good, but Shino knew their flaws inside and out. Kiba was headstrong, arrogant, and totally centered on brute force. Any halfway decent long-range specialist could have taken him out at this point, what with his utterly non-existent ninjutsu genjutsu library. Hinata, on the other hand, had exactly that hidden potential. She would make a fantastic ninjutsu specialist, and her genjutsu capabilities, as Shino knew from experiences that had never happened, were far from marginal. But she was a Hyuga, and Hyuga never used ninjutsu and seldom used genjutsu. So she was forced to rely on taijutsu, where she had scarcely any talent, and despite her clan's specialist techniques, it wasn't going well for her. It didn't help that she idolized Naruto, the village's resident physical technique fanatic. Well, secondary to Tomato Guy and Rock Lee. Kurenai was watching the spar as well. His insects reported to him after about half a minute. She also looked nervous. That was worrying. Kurenai might be somewhat more prone to nerves at this point in her life than other Jounin, but anything that made any Jounin nervous was labeled in Shino's mind as a bad thing. Well, most Jounin anyway. The spar finished after a time with another victory to Kiba. He always won against Hinata simply because, unlike her, he played to his strengths. As soon as the battle was settled, Shino stood. "Kurenai-sensei," he said quietly, not turning to look at the Jounin in the tree behind him. "What is wrong?" His insects saw her blink in surprise, adjust her face to show no fear, and leap down all in an instant. Nothing, Shino, she said, the epitome of calm. We have a mission, that's all. B rank, joined with Team 7. Shino saw Hinata's eyes widen and a blush spread across her face before he turned to Kurenai. I see, he said quietly. When are we to be deployed? Wait, hold on, cried Kiba. Why the hell are we being assigned to B-rank missions? Does it matter? Shino asked, turning to face him. We have 2 jounin, they could complete the average B rank alone in any case. At this, his insects reported that Kurenai winced. Ah, Shino thought. She's afraid for us. Understandable, but quite unnecessary. Kiba frowned. Then why not just send 2 jounin? He asked bewilderedly. Shino shrugged. Not our place to know or ask, he said simply. In reality, of course, it was nothing more or less than Naruto and Shikamaru deciding this was wise. But no one could know that yet. To answer your question, Shino, Kurenai said before Kiba could argue further, we're to head to the tower now for assignment. The mission starts today. Shino nodded. Naruto, he was sure, was pleased. Sasuke was leaning against the wall, resting in the neutrally alert position he'd developed over years of fighting, when Team 8 arrived. Kurenai led, Kiba following, Hinata behind, and Shino in the rear. That struck the Uchiha as odd. For a moment Hinata would have gravitated to the rear until he realized it was an impulsive tactical decision on Shino's part. He was placing himself and Kurenai, the 2 most capable and alert ninja, in the rear and front. This made Sasuke suddenly realize just how out of place they were. Each of them, Naruto, Shino, Gaara, Shikamaru, and himself, were probably more mentally prepared for combat than most of the ninja world's jounin. Their ninjutsu were in the top degrees. They were the best. Like wolves in sheep's clothing, he thought, and hated himself. In the instant he thought all of these, Naruto looked over at where the other team was coming in and smiled, not his old, childish, insincerely wide smile, but the soft, almost hesitant smile he had always saved for those who were the very closest to him. Hey, Hinata-chan. Hinata blushed a deep red. Hello, and Naruto-kun. Good, you've arrived, said the Sandaime from behind his desk then, and at once, everyone turned to him. Team 7 and 8, your mission is as follows. You are to escort the bridge builder Tazuna to his home in the Land of Waves and protect him while he completes a bridge there. Be warned, we have received intelligence that an S-rank missing nin is in the area, but is not actively seeking confrontation. Do you understand? All 8 of the joint squad's members nodded dutifully, and Sasuke was struck by an odd feeling of nostalgia. He almost smiled. It was good, he decided, to be back here, when things were simple. In that case, bring Tazuna-san in, said Hiruzen to the waiting attendant. The ninja nodded and left. After about half a minute of silence, he returned with the bridge builder. Sasuke frowned slightly. The man wasn't drunk. Good day, Tazuna-san, said the Sandaime. These 8 ninja will be your escort on the way back to Wave Country. Tazuna nodded, studying them all. Sasuke remembered last time, when the drunken man had openly insulted Naruto. But this time he wasn't drunk. Sasuke didn't know why, but he supposed it didn't matter. At least this time he didn't look likely to insult anyone. I'd just like to thank all of you for helping me, he said courteously. I hope it doesn't inconvenience any of you too greatly. Sasuke shrugged. You get paid to go out of your way to build bridges. We get paid to go out of our way to help you get out of your way to build bridges. Our Jounin sensei get paid to go out of their way to help us go out of our way to help you go out of your way to build bridges. He noticed then that every single person in the room was staring at him. He just shrugged again. Economy. Tazuna blinked at him for a moment before chuckling. I suppose that's one pragmatic way of looking at it. And also, thank you, Hokage-sama, for forewarning me about this meeting. The Sandaime smiled. It wouldn't do to be drunk for your mission assignment, would it? Absolutely not. Tazuna laughed. Naruto and Sasuke made eye contact and looked away almost immediately. Anyway, said Kakashi, smiling with his one visible eye as he always did. Shall we be going? Tazuna nodded at him. Whenever you're ready. We'll do introductions on the road. Kakashi gave him a quick thumbs up and then turned to the Sandaime. Well, hoping to see you in a couple weeks or so, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded gravely. Yes. Good luck, Kakashi, Kurenai. And they were off again. Chapter 27 Re-entry. Hinata was having a difficult time staying conscious. She didn't even know it was physically possible to blush this hard for this long. As soon as they'd left the gates of Konoha behind them, Naruto had fallen into step with her and started talking, just making light conversation. Sasuke had watched for a moment, and then spoken quietly to Kakashi before going off into the woods with Shino to watch their flanks. Hinata didn't care in the slightest. It was her first mission with Naruto. That was already unbelievable, and when it had first been assigned she'd been almost delirious with glee. But that wasn't the end of it. Now, out of all the people here, the 2 Jounin and the other 4 Genin, 2 of which were his teammates, Naruto had chosen to talk to her. She would have thought she was dreaming if she hadn't felt pain when she pinched herself. But now they'd been walking for half an hour. The sun was high above, the morning was almost spent. And by now even she, timid and shy though she was, had no choice but to get comfortable with conversation with Naruto. At first she almost wanted to flee, but now she was almost at ease talking with him. She still stuttered horribly, though. I've never been really good at structured katas and styles, see, Naruto said sheepishly, grinning at her. So instead I just watch everyone's taijutsu and put together all the moves I like. It sometimes goes crazy and doesn't work very well, but it does make my taijutsu some of the most unpredictable of any ninja I've seen. That sounds very useful, and Naruto-kun, said Hinata quietly. Shino-kun says that the best way to defeat one's enemy is to understand them as well as one understands oneself. If they can't know you, they can't win. Naruto cocked his head. Shino says that? He said in surprise. Then he grinned. That's a Nara saying. I guess he picked it up from Shikamaru. He has been spending a lot of time with Shikamaru-san, Hinata nodded. But inwardly she wondered how Naruto had known that Nara-mato. Naruto had rarely been seen with anyone up until he'd become a genin and joined his squad. Where would he have come to know the Nara better than Chieris, however downtrodden, to one of the most prestigious clans of Konoha did? There, see? He grinned. Then, suddenly, he reached out, grabbed her arm, and gently pulled her towards him. For a moment she had no idea what was going on, and her head spun. Then, as she looked down to hide her flaming face, she saw that she'd almost stepped into a small puddle of water in the middle of the road. Sorry about that, said Naruto embarrassedly. There was, she saw as she looked back up to him, a dusting of pink on his cheeks, too, and seeing it made her heart race. We don't want you getting wet, do we? She shook her head silently, not trusting herself to speak. Anyway, he continued, I've even incorporated a couple gentle fist techniques into my taijutsu style, only those that don't need a Byakugan to be effective. But what about you? What kind of taijutsu do you use? Well, the gentle fist, she said sheepishly. Hyuga don't usually learn much else. I suppose that makes sense, he said, shrugging. But what about ninjutsu? What kind of ninjutsu do you use? She looked down. The Hyuga don't. And then there was the sound of clinking metal, followed by a gut-wrenching noise of tearing flesh behind them. Both of them whirled to see Kakashi being torn asunder by 2 chain-wielding ninja who had emerged from the puddle she had almost stepped in. The ninja were wearing kiri headbands. Keep this up, said Sasuke quietly. If that missing nin does appear, I want advance warning. Shino nodded. And what will you do? He asked quietly. Sasuke gestured toward the path to their left. There's about to be an attack on our party by Kiri missing nin if the facts are consistent, he explained. I want to be there in case Naruto's distracted. Ah, Hinata, nodded Shino in agreement. Wise. What is the enemy's strength? 2 Chunin, Sasuke shrugged. Nothing too dangerous, I took them last time without much trouble. Naruto got hit that time though, and this time, we have more targets. Ah, Shino murmured in understanding. Go then. I will watch. Sasuke nodded gratefully to him, and leapt back towards the path. He reached the trees just out of obvious view just as the party was walking past the puddle where he knew 2 missing nin were hiding. He saw Naruto pull Hinata out of the way of it. Good, he thought. He's not too distracted. Suddenly he met Kakashi's eye. Sasuke pointed at the puddle. Kakashi nodded and turned away without a word. He'll want to dupe them like last time, Sasuke thought. Figure out who they're targeting. And it'll get him ready for when Momochi appears, so it's good. Fine. So Sasuke curbed his famous impatience, and waited for all of 30 seconds while the Mist Nin decided it was safe. Then they struck. Kakashi was hit. And substituted with a log right next to Sasuke. Use substitution, hissed Kakashi softly. Sasuke understood. He formed a ram's seal and was gone, replaced by the same bundle of twigs that had just replaced Kakashi. Sasuke saw the two Chunin charge toward his team. One launched his chain toward Naruto and Hinata. But there was an odd twist to it. Sasuke blinked, and suddenly he saw, as though silhouetted in the air, the movement of the chain as it whipped around and struck Tazuna in the heart before it happened. So he didn't move to defend his friend and teammate. Instead, he leapt into action to guard the bridge builder. Just as he'd foreseen, the chain whipped around and came straight toward him. Sasuke grinned. It had been too long since he'd seen battle. He drew a kunai and hooked it through one of the holes in the chain, his eyes tracking the linked metal as it flew, seemingly in slow motion, towards him. He spun the blade around in his hand and plunged it up to the hilt into the ground. Looking back up, his eyes locked onto the other Chunin's chain, which was swinging towards him in an arc. Sasuke had two kunai in his hands in an instant, and using one as leverage, redirected it towards the Chunin whose chain he had incapacitated. The man's eyes widened in the instant he had before the poisoned razor blade shredded his gut, and he was down. In that same instant, Sasuke was already moving toward the other ninja. The man was a Chunin, and was therefore trained enough to waste no time on guilt for his inadvertent friendly fire, opting instead to swing his chain about at his assailant. The Uchiha could have ducked, but that would have made the chain continue its course and strike Tazuna. So instead he spun, watched the chain's movement for an instant, and then tossed a shuriken. It intercepted the very tip of the chain, redirecting it into a tree. Sasuke knew this not by sight though, but by sound, because he had continued his turn and was facing his enemy once again. He grasped the man's metal-encased arm in a vice-like grip, and, using that as leverage, leapt whirling into the air until he was almost parallel to the ground, facing down. Then he kicked the man in the chest with both feet. Sasuke felt a couple of ribs give way under his sandals. The kick was powerful enough that both he and the man flew in opposite directions several feet, the man's weapon coming off in Sasuke's hands. The boy flipped in the air, hooking the man's chain gauntlet onto his right arm, and landed already turning towards the man. Only to see that his services were no longer required. Naruto had caught the flaying man, spun him, and thrown him to the ground on his back, and was now kneeling over him with a kunai at his neck. The entire battle had taken perhaps 30 seconds. Sasuke reached for the gauntlet to take it off, the thought for a moment. This thing is far more flawed than it should be, he thought. The chain is too easily compromised, the gauntlet too hard to remove. But it's still an asset. If all else fails, I'll bring it back to Konoha to put in our village weapons stores. And it could be improved without too much difficulty. So he left it on as he walked over to Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki was interrogating the prisoner, not that there was any real need. They both knew most of the information the man could give them anyway. But for the sake of appearances they had to appear unknowing. Who hired you? Naruto growled furiously. Why were you attacking our client? I'll never divulge information about an employer, hissed the Chunin. You underestimate me, Leaf Genin. I always knew your village was soft. I bet you'd tell anyone that in this situation. Do I seem soft to you? Sasuke asked quietly, stepping into the man's field of view. The defeated shinobi looked up at him and shuddered. No, he muttered noncommittally. Then when I tell you that my teammate here could kick my ass twice before I hit the ground, I want you to know what I mean, said Sasuke. He's... Well, you tell him, he nodded to Naruto. I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, said Naruto softly, leaning into the man's ear so the other genin who were coming toward them wouldn't hear. Sasuke saw the man's eyes widen in terror. And it gets better. See, Kur the Kyuubi and I have an understanding going. There's no seal over him. If I need his help, I can call on every ounce of his chakra in a moment. I can even speak freely, said Kurama softly, transmitting his thoughts outward to both Sasuke and the Chunin. So tread carefully, mortal. Now, who hired you? Talk. All right. The man screamed, his voice breaking. All right. I'll talk. Just get away from me. Naruto stood up, and Sasuke stepped away from the man. Kakashi came up next to them, and so did Kurenai, as the man began to speak. We were hired by the shipping tycoon Gato, he began. The two of us and our group, led by Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the hidden mist. Sasuke nodded. He's a member of the Seven Swordsmen, right? Or a former member? Does he stay a member after defecting from the village? The membership is embodied by the blades, said the Chunin, eager to change the subject. As long as he wields Kubikurabucho, he is one of the Seven Swordsmen. Sasuke nodded. I see. All right, why are you working for Gato, and why does he want Izuna dead? Gato has enforced a full trade monopoly on the island nation of the Land of Waves, said the Chunin. He controls the water, and thus controls everything in something close to a dictatorship. And if Tizuna's bridge is completed, he loses his embargo, said Kakashi. But I thought Gato was a relatively upright businessman. The Chunin shook his head. Gato's ships are used for more than just simple transport. I've stocked up a few of them myself. He uses his merchant marine to move and sell massive amounts of contraband all over the world. And he intends to use the Land of Waves as a base of operations for that purpose. Sasuke shrugged. Crime fighting wasn't in our mission parameters, nor was going against one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. But I can't help but feel guilty leaving Tizuna like this. What do you say, Kakashi-sensei, Kurenai-sensei? Let's talk about it with the Genin and Tizuna. We still don't know why he duped us, said Kakashi. Kurenai nodded. Good idea. What about the prisoner? Sasuke shrugged. We should probably send him back to Konoha somehow, but who'll take him? I can't, said Shino's voice, and suddenly Sasuke's eyes locked on to a tiny insect flying past him. It hooked onto the man's neck and he went limp. I will send an insect clone to Konoha carrying him. I'll deliver him straight to Tianai. Good, said Kurenai, nodding at her genin behind them. Sasuke turned to face the Abirame just as he was creating his insect clone. Make sure you get him there safe, said Sasuke. Shino nodded. He seemed about to say something when Sakura ran up to them and, staring at Sasuke, exclaimed, What happened to your eyes, Sasuke-kun? Are you okay? Sasuke froze. Slowly, he halted the flow of chakra to his eyes. He'd had the Sharingan active during that whole battle. The 3-tomo Sharingan he wasn't supposed to have yet. Don't worry, Kurama said quietly. It's not too much of a problem. There have been similar occurrences. Did they happen against 2 simple Chunin? Sasuke thought back. Kurama didn't answer. This wasn't good. Chapter 28 Rephrase. Damn it, Kurama thought. This is that Shiakamaru boy's arena. Now I have to salvage this. He took a tiny fraction of time to think. Then a little longer, because nothing came to him. And then Sasuke started speaking. It's the Sharingan, he said quietly. The Uchiha clan's Kekkei Genkai. Through Naruto's eyes, Kurama watched as Hinata nodded. It was unlocked now, then it said that combat stress activates it. Sasuke cocked his head at her. How did you know that? He asked in surprise. The Sharingan's workings are a clan secret. Hinata blushed, looking down embarrassedly. The Hyuga understand the Sharingan better than most, she replied. We can grasp the workings of most Jujutsu with more ease than others, given the Byakugan. Sasuke nodded, accepting the answer. Not like there's a clan to keep the secret now, anyway, he shrugged. But you're right. It awakens in combat stress. And yours activated here, Kakashi decided. Kurama raised a spiritual eyebrow. Kakashi must not know exactly how the Sharingan awakens, he surmised. I suppose Uchiha Obito was one of those rare cases where full awakening is achieved all at once. Sasuke nodded. It was. Interesting, he said quietly. I could see the chain's paths before they'd moved. Well, enough about Sasuke, said Naruto suddenly. We should move. Sakura glared at him. How dare you? She said loudly. You're just jealous. Sakura, Sasuke said quietly but forcefully. You're better than that. Kurama sighed as the girl froze in surprise. Clearly she wasn't. You saw her last time, Naruto told him. You know she is. I know she can be, Kurama shot back. Right now she's little more than dead weight, from a tactical standpoint. Naruto sighed inwardly, but didn't bother to argue. What do you mean, Sasuke? Asked Sakura, turning slowly to face the Uchiha. Sasuke sighed. What was our first lesson as a team? She didn't answer. Teamwork, Naruto said finally. Unbiased teamwork, Sasuke corrected, looking at Sakura. Naruto was right, we should get moving. We can talk about the Sharingan on the road as well as we can here. You should have seen that. Sakura looked down. I'm sorry. Don't be, Sasuke said, turning to the bridge builder, who was off to the side, watching the proceedings. Just improve. Tazuna-san, are you all right? Yes, thanks to you, said the man, but he looked ill at ease. Because now we know he's lied to us, Kurama thought. Fool. It takes a shinobi to trick a shinobi. That's good, said Kakashi, coming up to him. Now I think we should talk about this. Tazuna sighed and explained. The land of waves is poor, especially given Gato's exploitation. Even the daimyo hasn't got much. Given what little money I could get together, all I could afford was a C-rank mission. Someone else footed the bill when it rose to B rank. Kakashi nodded. I see. But I'm not sure you understand. He studied the bridge builder for a moment. You do realize you've essentially performed an act of aggression on Konoha, don't you? The man's eyes widened. How? You deliberately gave the ninja a mission above their expected capability to handle, Kakashi said smoothly. If any ninja on this mission dies as a result of something you hid, it's on your head. Tazuna shuddered visibly. Naruto blinked in surprise. Kurama snorted at his host's amazement. Oh, come on, Kit. This never occurred to you? How did you become Hokage exactly? Oh, shut up, furball, Naruto snapped childishly. In that case, maybe we should head home, Sakura put in nervously. I mean, we're genin. We shouldn't really even be doing B-rank missions, let alone A-rank. Kakashi just laughed harshly. Shino, wait a moment, he said quickly to the Abirame, who had hung about prepared to step in should Sasuke bungle covering his mistake. I remembered a question I need to ask him, wake him up. He turned back to Sakura. Depending on the answer to that question, Sakura, Kakashi said quietly, this mission may have jumped to S rank. All of the genin were totally silent. Even Naruto felt worried. We'll be fine, Kit, said Kurama. But in the confines of his private mind he added, I hope. Suddenly the man gasped as he awoke. Kakashi turned to him. One last question, he said, smiling at the man with his one eye. On your missing nin force is there a ninja who calls himself the Dishonored? He wears full body armor in a signature style. The Chunin was already shaking his head. Never heard of him. Good, Kakashi sighed, nodding to Shino. The insect user incapacitated the man again and was off. All right, Kakashi said, looking around at them all. As long as that answer holds true, this mission is A rank. I don't like leaving a mission totally inconclusive, so we'll at least take you to your homeland. Tazuna-san, if that's all right with you, Kurenai-san? Yuhi looked worried. If you're sure it's a good idea, Kakashi-san. I'm worried, honestly. Kakashi smiled at her. It'll be fine, at least that far. They'll want to see if we leave him there before attacking again in any case. Kurenai nodded. All right. So once we reach Wave, we'll decide whether to continue? Kakashi nodded. Everyone agree? There were no objections, though Hinata and Sakura looked worried. I wonder if there is validity to the argument that Kunoichi are weak, Kurama mused. No, I think not, they're simply more cautious, and among humans, caution can mean the difference between life and death. All right, Kakashi finally said. Then let's go. The oar slipped in and out of the water in almost perfect silence. The mist was thick about them. The team of 8 was split into 2 groups. 4 of them sat in the boat with Tazuna and the boatman, Kaji, while the other 4 those who both could and could get away with walking on the water with the greatest ease, namely the 2 jounin, Naruto, and Sasuke. The boat wasn't big enough for the 8 of them. Naruto had looked at him questioningly when he had stayed in the boat, but Sasuke had explained to him quietly. The reasoning was obvious to the Abirame. Naruto and Sasuke were far and away higher profile. Compared to their other activities, walking on water was minute in importance. Shino, on the other hand, was a hidden trump card. The longer he kept his abilities hidden, the more effective he was. The water walkers were immediately beside the boat. The thick mist made it advisable to stay near the client. Naruto was taking point, immediately in front of the boat. Sasuke was to the right, and Kakashi brought up the rear, leaving Kurenai walking right beside Shino on the left. She looked worried, Shino mused as he looked up at her. It was unfortunate. Caution was wise, but fear did not befit a jounin. Contingency kitsune might be problematic, but after all, it was no Jinchuriki. Naruto would protect them if it came to blows with the mysterious enemy. But Kurenai had no idea about Naruto's ability to wield Kurama's strength. For all she knew, the bijou was sealed totally, allowing for no chakra passage into the boy. It would never occur to her that perhaps there was no seal at all. But regardless of the reasons, a frightened jounin was less help than a confident if cautious one. Kurenai-sensei, Shino said quietly into the thick silence. She looked over at him in surprise. What is it, Shino-san? You must calm yourself, he said softly. Team 7 is unworried, and Kakashi is more experienced than you are at this sort of mission. Kakashi chuckled. It's not every day that a genin tells his sensei to follow another jounin's example. It's simply truth, Shino countered. Kurenai-sensei is worried, and her fear dulls her effectiveness as surely as it does for any other ninja. If there is a serious threat, we must be ready to meet it optimistically or risk failure. Shino-san's right, said Sasuke from the boat's other side. Any force of arms must go to battle prepared to lose but intending to win. So cheer up, Kurenai-sensei, said Naruto loudly, grinning back at them. Shino winced at the sudden increase in decibel level, but it was sensible. Naruto knew where the original threats were positioned, and if contingency kitsune was nearby, he already knew the team was passing. Of course, Kaji the boatman did not see it that way. Be quiet, brat, he whispered furiously. We're in grave enough danger as it is. If Gato catches us, we're dead. Don't bet on it, murmured Sasuke, but shut up, Naruto. Fine, mumbled Naruto, pouting childishly. Shino was struck by the blonde boy's immaturity. He's enjoying this second childhood, he thought in mild interest. While it lasts in the end, though, we're already at war. That thought surprised him, but it was true. Akatsuki was out there and was ready to harvest the bijou. They might have already begun. Orochimaru was still alive, building up Oto even as they prepared to face him. This is already wartime, Shino mused. And we few who have lived it already are the only ones who know it. Thank you, Shino-san, Kurenai said suddenly, breaking into his thoughts, and he looked up at her in surprise. She was smiling at him. You're right, she said. Defeatism never helped anyone. He nodded slowly, but said nothing. They all knew it was true. And then the mist was suddenly behind them, and the day was bright. All arrayed before them was a bright little port town, small, quiet, and almost quaint, even to someone who had come from Konoha and not one of the massive cities the daimyos of the 5 great nations resided in. They landed and Kaji bade Tazuna farewell, speeding away on the motor that had been too dangerous to use a moment ago, while Tazuna was there. Come on, said the bridge builder, turning from the water. My house is in another hamlet, about 2 miles away. We can rest and eat there when we arrive. The ninjas silently formed up around him as he led them away, through the cluster of buildings and into the trees. There's the lake, Naruto thought. Zabuza should be here any minute. Not nervous, are you? Kurama chuckled jokingly. It's just Momochi. We could kick him into next week with our eyes closed. Naruto smirked inwardly. Not really. Although, Hinata-chan. Bah, Kurama said flatly. We've got 2 jounin and 3 of you human time travelers, one of which has me inside of him. The Hyuga will be fine. Naruto grinned. You're right, of course. Then his smile faded for a moment. Still, though, I think it's wise if we split up the 2 teams for the battle. Team 7 can fight Zabuza and Team 8 will escort Tazuna away. I agree, the QB grunted. Get it to happen when the fight begins. And then the fight began. Get down, Kakashi said, suddenly and forcefully. Naruto was already moving, having heard the sudden whooshing of air that signified Kubikurabucho moving through the air. But he did not simply duck. He dove toward Hinata and pulled her down, holding her with his arm across her back as the massive word whizzed overhead. Of course, she'd already been going down when he reached her, and in a moment he felt guilty for underestimating her. "Sorry, Hinata-chan," he said quietly and quickly. "I should have trusted you to go down yourself." "It's fine," and Naruto-kun, whispered Hinata. Her face was bright red, and so close to his. He blinked, shook himself, and stood, giving her a smile. Zabuza was already watching them from his vantage point on his sword. "Kurenai-sensei," Naruto called. "Take your squad and get Tazuna-san out of here." Naruto could hear the worry in Kiba's voice. "What's going on? Who's that?" "Zabuza Momochi," Kakashi said flatly. "A rank missing nin from Kiri. Head of the outlaw force Gatos employed to get rid of Tazuna." Naruto, who was beside Kakashi, saw the man turn to face Kurenai behind them. "Naruto's right, Kurenai-san. Get your team and go." "Shouldn't you join and face him, and we genin can get Tazuna away?" Sakura said softly and worriedly. "This is an A-rank mission, Sakura," said Kakashi flatly. "We cannot allow genin to move about on their own. Stay behind Naruto, Sasuke, and myself in this battle, all right? Go, Kurenai!" Naruto turned to the now standing Hinata for just long enough to smile at her again and give a quick wave before turning his narrowing eyes to Zabuza. "I'm surprised Tazuna was able to afford 2 squads, Zabuza said, chuckling. "Even if they are genin teams." "Genin teams, maybe," said Kakashi, as Kurenai led her team away at a run. "But they have jounin." And Naruto saw him raise his headband, and the Sharingan shone red. Chapter 29 Reintegration. "Bah," muttered Kurama in scorn. "Jounin are nothing. It's us the fools should be afraid of." "Maybe," Naruto agreed. "But remember, we don't want to kill him. Haku would never forgive us." "And in all honesty," Kurama said, "I'd rather this moron was Mizukage than the puppet we have now." Naruto agreed inwardly, knowing Kurama would sense it, but didn't reply with words. Instead, he looked over at Sasuke. The Uchiha caught his eye, and in the instant exchange of 2 men bound more closely than kin, they had a plan. Naruto grinned, and turned back to Zabuza, who had been speaking through the past exchange, which had taken all of 3 seconds. "Oh? I get to see the infamous Sharingan so early?" he said mockingly. "I'm honored, Kakashi. Really." Sasuke snorted. "1 Sharingan's fine," he said loudly. 2 are better." In the instant where Zabuza turned his attention to Sasuke's now manifested Sharingan, Naruto formed his clone hand seal and acted. "Sasuke, get back!" Kakashi said firmly. Sakura clenched her fist. "I know Sasuke-kun is strong, but this guy's dangerous," she thought. "Please, Sasuke-kun, don't kill yourself." She was immensely relieved when Sasuke only smirked and stepped back into formation. "Fine," he said. "I could take him." Momochi looked at him and began to laugh. "Oh, this is great!" he howled. "Not only are they genin, they're blasted morons to boot. This keeps getting better and better." He stared down at Sasuke, a malevolent gleam in his eyes. "Take me?" he said, and suddenly there was a horrible weight of fear over Sakura, and in the man's cold eyes she could see 1,000 hypothetical deaths for all of them. "Foolish boy. I am Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the hidden mist, master of the silent killing. No more than 1 jounin in 100 stands a chance against me. You are outmatched." And suddenly he vanished, and then there he was, right behind Sasuke. And in that knowledge, "Die," he whispered cruelly. The massive sword flashed, sliced through the air, right through Sasuke's head. "No!" Sakura shrieked. Or where his head had been. He was gone. Zabuza blinked. "What?" Suddenly there was a quiet, mirthless laughter all about them. "You're the fool, Momochi," said Sasuke's voice quietly from all directions. "The Sharingan is powerful, more powerful than you." Zabuza looked around wildly. The entire team had vanished. "What is this?" he said furiously. Then his eyes widened. "Genjutsu," he thought, gritting his teeth. But in that case, his body was in grave danger. "Kai!" he shouted, breaking chakra flow. Nothing happened. It's useless, said the Uchiha's voice silkily. I don't think you understand your predicament. This is no genin's genjutsu, Zabuza thought wildly. And I won't be able to get out quickly. But how did a genin learn this? It means either he's not a genin, or it's not a genjutsu. His eyes widened, then closed. He reached his chakra out of his body, into the world around him. The natural chakra that was ever present in reality was still there, which was something none but a top-level jounin could replicate. He grinned. Hidden misjutsu, he said, forming the hand seals. For a moment, the air about him thickened, and then, suddenly, there was a light gust of air. The fog vanished. Useless, said Sasuke again. Zabuza's eyes widened. Hidden misjutsu, he said louder now. Again the mist appeared. Again the wind blew it away. But this time, he felt in the wind with his limited chakra sensory capacity. In doing so, he learned two things. First, the wind was charged with a chakra so powerful it cowed even he, who had once stood proud alongside the walking chakra tank that was Hashigaki Kisame. And second, it came from his right, the very direction in which Haku was hidden. He leapt into action. Damn it! He said to himself furiously. They've got the kid! They had. And as he felt himself kicked to the earth, and a cold steel blade placed at his throat by a steady hand, he knew they had him, too. But they hadn't. Momochi Zabuza, said a quiet, hissing voice. We suggest you make no struggle. We have sealed us in a temporary genjutsu, where time flows as we desire. We have all the time we need. The blade was withdrawn. Zabuza leapt up to face his assailant, and saw steel. Who the hell are you? He growled at the man in the armor. We are Dishonored, said the man as the blue lenses that saw for him spun, as though he were narrowing his eyes under them. And we have a common enemy. He's coming your way, Sasuke told Kurama silently. Fine, said the Kyuubi, and Sasuke felt his mind tensing in readiness. There was a moment of waiting. I thought you said he was coming, Kurama muttered caustically. Are you quite certain you didn't mean, I'm a delusional moron? Quite sure, said Sasuke absently. Where the hell was that missing nin? He couldn't have escaped. From the instant Naruto's hidden shadow clones had used the Hiraishin to move the three of them out of the clearing via the seals he'd planted on each of them, Kakashi had been watching Zabuza carefully to prevent him running, not that they expected him to abandon Haku. Kurama snorted. He's not coming, boy. What are you? Sasuke waited for a moment, then asked, cautiously, Kurama? Naruto? Uchiha, get over here, said the Kyuubi quietly. Sasuke frowned. Sakura? Bring her, she's not safe alone, said the fox tersely. What's up? Sasuke asked quietly. Get the hell over here and you'll see, Kurama murmured. Kakashi leapt down into the clearing behind his foe. Naruto faced him on the other side. The missing nin in the hunter nin's mask they'd caught was unconscious beside him. And between them was the man Kakashi had honestly hoped he wouldn't meet on this mission. The Dishonored turned his head slightly, not quite facing Kakashi but showing that he knew he was there. Hatake Kakashi, he said in a voice that was as cold as death, and while quiet it seemed to carry all about them. You were the teacher. You favored the other, you lied to me, and you allowed the other to surpass me and slay the beloved. As the man spoke these cryptic words, Sasuke leapt down beside Kakashi. His eyes were narrowed with hate, and with something like horror. Kakashi could sense Sakura, too, in the trees behind them. And if he could, so could the Dishonored. Uchiha Sasuke, said the armored man then. You were the other. You betrayed me and cast me out behind you. You slew and hated yourself and others and me. You slew the beloved. Kitsune, said Sasuke softly. I betrayed you and all the others, but now you've betrayed yourself. The man gave a mirthless laugh, distorted by the mask he wore. I am you, other, he said softly, turning to them. My mind was forged in your image. You hate. I hate. We are one. No, said Sasuke quietly, and there was self-loathing in his voice. You're what I was. One does not change so lightly, said the man. When you stand before the thief and can forgive him, then you will have changed. Until that day, we are but two faces of the same soul. You're wrong, said Sasuke softly. The man laughed again but did not press the point. Harino Sakura, he said instead. I see you where you hide. You were the rejecter. And Naruto? Sasuke interrupted blandly, and Kakashi wondered if he was trying to get the masked man to say something in particular. The Dishonored didn't move for a moment, and then it turned back to the blonde Jinchuriki, who Kakashi couldn't see behind him. Uzumaki Naruto, it said, and then it paused. I did not originally anticipate facing you. I have a habit of surprising people, said the boy, and his voice had a strange, deep overtone. Kakashi signaled to Sasuke and they fanned out, enclosing the Dishonored in a triangle. And Kakashi saw that Naruto's eyes were red, with slits for pupils. I concede the point, said the Dishonored softly. I will revel in your death. You were the fool. Kakashi saw him turn his head to Sasuke. To me, he was nothing more. A fool who shall die for his idiocy. Sasuke didn't say another word, but Kakashi saw his eyes change. His pupils changed their shapes, extending into his black irises, growing red. In a moment, there was a blood-red six-pointed star in each of his eyes, with a three-pointed shuriken residing within each. Then Naruto formed a ram seal, and Kakashi was swamped by an overload of chakra all about. Naruto was exuding the stuff in tidal waves. Indeed, he was starting to glow golden. The Dishonored laughed. Peace, he said. I will not battle you today. I have that which I sought. And then he was gone, vanished into thin air. And Kakashi realized that their missing Nin prisoner was too. There, Zabuza said as the Dishonored reappeared beside him. Thank you. I suppose I owe you one. No, you don't, said the Dishonored flatly. Our interests coincide. I want my vengeance, you want the bridge builder. It is logical that I should join with you. Zabuza shrugged. I suppose so, he said. Still, I don't see how helping me save Haku helped you. While the Dishonored was keeping the Konohanin's attention, Zabuza had utilized his intensive knowledge of stealth and his deadly speed to hastily spirit Haku's still form away from the boy guarding him. It was a mystery how the child had taken Haku out the ice style. That is the flaw of missing Nin, said the man beside him softly. They do not understand the power of teamwork. It is what makes the Dawn so superior. Dawn? Akatsuki? Zabuza asked curiously. I thought that group was destroyed in the last war. They are reborn, said the Dishonored quietly. I was forged to serve them. He turned his mask directly to Zabuza. Your sword brother, Hashigaki Kisame, is among them. Huh. Zabuza had never been particularly familiar with the shark-like member of the Seven Swordsmen, but he clearly remembered the man's deadly strength. If that was an indicator of the group's skill. Mind if I ally with your lot? He asked casually. If I know Kisame, we might still have similar interests. The Dishonored didn't reply for a time, and then he shrugged. I doubt you would find it to your liking, he said in his quiet voice. For one thing, we have the very Mizuki you seek to overthrow in our pocket. Zabuza whipped his head around to stare at the man. The Akatsuki controls the fourth? He spluttered in shock. The armored man nodded gravely. His days are numbered. In any case, the Mist Village is already starting to realize that he is not quite his own man. I intend to suggest that we dispose of him on our own term when I return to the outpost. I will bring your opinion, if you like, and I will put your name forward for membership if the others agree. But not if they don't, right? Asked Zabuza. I don't much like the idea of fighting to keep the Mizukage I tried to depose in power. Of course, said the Dishonored. But for now, we have a mission. I have a plan. The four Konoha ninja were gathered together in the clearing where they'd faced the Dishonored, seated in a circle together. They had all wordlessly decided that they needed some rest before heading on. Respectfully, Sasuke, said Naruto after a time. If you're at liberty to say. What the hell was that? Sasuke, who had been looking down into his lap in silence until Naruto spoke to him, looked up at his teammate. Naruto saw that his eyes were slightly red, and that his lip was raw, as though he had been biting it, but there were no tears. Still, anything that could affect the notoriously aloof Uchiha this much was dangerous. That was, Sasuke said softly, and then he almost seemed to choke on the words. That was a shade of a future, he said quietly. A future either of us want. Naruto's eyes widened. It's one of us, he realized. Oh, it's a hell of a lot more than that, Kit, grunted Kurama softly. Then what is it? Naruto asked, exasperated. I may tell you later, said the Kyuubi quietly. If I have to. But telling you now would complicate things. If you figure it out, let me know. Until then, stay ignorant and be glad of it. I wouldn't like the truth? Naruto asked softly. I don't even know how you'd react, said the nine-tailed fox simply. But no. You most certainly wouldn't like it. Chapter 30 Recovery. Hinata bit her lip hard. I will not cry, she thought with feeble determination. I will be strong. Naruto-kun can handle himself. The five of them, Team 8 and Tazuna, were moving as fast as they could, which was not all that fast, given Tazuna's age and lack of ninja training, in the direction of the village where Tazuna lived. They'd been moving for about 10 minutes, but they still had twice again the distance they'd already traveled before they arrived. And Tazuna, it seemed, could not keep up this pace. He suddenly stopped, breathing heavily. I can't go on like this, he murmured hoarsely. I'm not as young as I was. Fine, said Kurenai, moving over to him. I guess I'll have to carry you. She turned to the team. We move in the trees. She lifted the old man up, piggyback style, and allowed him to clasp his arms around her neck. Up now! And they were off. They moved a little faster now, but Hinata was still worried. How much longer until we reach the village, do you think? She asked aloud, to no one in particular. Soon enough, said Shino, falling into a steady pace beside her. But listen, Hinata-san. The village will not be a safe haven. She blinked. What? You suffer from a common illusion among genin, Shino explained quietly. You felt that just because we are in a public place we are safe. That is not the case. Shinobi means safety, not civilians, and this land has no shinobi. Hinata bit her lower lip. So we're not safe even at the village? Ninja make their own safety, said Shino. Once Team 7 arrives we will be safe enough, I feel. They are powerful. Why yes, murmured Hinata, thinking of Naruto. They are. But that is not the point, Shino said, interrupting her thoughts. I am telling you this so that you will be on guard in the village. There is an S-rank missing nin in the vicinity, and he may have no qualms about attacking a populous village. You must be ready at any moment to leap into action. Hinata nodded. I'll try, Shino-kun. Good, said the Abirame, leaving her side and making for Kiba, likely to relay the same message. She watched him, considering. The boy had always been enigmatic, and his strength had been a mystery even in the academy, but recently he seemed to have changed. It was hard to tell. Hinata had not known him well enough in the academy to be certain, but that observation seemed to her one that no genin would, or should, understand. It showed experience, which in a child of the shinobi world amounted to little more than trauma. Shino-kun. She thought. What happened to you? Was that a body flicker, Naruto? Kakashi asked quietly as they leapt through the woods. The technique you used to get us out of the battle? The blond boy beside him didn't answer for a moment. Kakashi looked over at him, but it was impossible to identify his expression in the shadows of the trees. No, he said finally. It wasn't. Kakashi felt his right fist clench involuntarily. He forced it to relax before asking, it was Hiraishin, wasn't it? The flying thunder god? Yes, said Naruto flatly. Kakashi felt a hand slip into his kunai pouch and pull out a blade he hadn't seen in years. I planted one of these on each of you, said Naruto quietly, handing the three-pronged kunai to Kakashi. I thought it'd be wise to have an emergency means of assistance. Kakashi was silent for a moment, not trusting himself to speak. You were right, he eventually said, his voice carefully cool and detached. But he saw Naruto grin sadly at him and knew it was pointless. He looked away from the boy, blinking as rapidly as he dared in the attempt to preserve what little dignity he still had before him. You really are your father's son, he murmured at length. I know, said Naruto quietly. I'd be dead otherwise. They moved on in silence until they reached the village, and there was Team 8, waiting for them. Well, most of Team 8. Where's Kurenai? Kakashi asked the three genin quickly. She went ahead to escort Tazuna-san to his home, said Shino, nodding respectfully at each member of Team 7 in turn. She left us here to guide you when you arrived. Good, said Kakashi, nodding. It made sense they didn't want one of the teams wandering aimlessly when they could be useful, and while leaving genin alone was normally unwise, in a civilian village it was at least a little safer than out in the wild. Let on, then. Well, Kurenai-san, would you like some tea? Asked the woman in the kitchen happily. She had introduced herself as Tsunami just minutes ago, and had already thanked the young jounin many times for helping her father home. Yes, thank you, said Kurenai, trying to match the civilian woman's cheer with her own slightly forced smile. She was sure, though, that the woman saw no hint of the mask. She was, after all, a civilian. But Kurenai was worried. Her genin were alone now, and Team 7 was occupied with Momochi for all she knew, or might have even been defeated, though she doubted it. Kakashi was, after all, more than capable himself. Do you think your team will be all right? Tsunami asked eventually, bringing 2 cups of tea and sitting across from the kunoichi. You said they ran into a rogue ninja? Will they need help? Kurenai shook her head immediately. No, she said firmly. Kakashi is one of our best jounin. They'll be fine. I hope. And my duty is to stay here and protect Tazuna-san regardless. Kurenai-sensei, came Kiba's voice from outside. The genjutsu specialist stood and turned to the window. There was the Inuzuka, grinning and waving, and behind him were his 2 teammates and Team 7. Kurenai barely suppressed a relieved sigh at the sight. Everything went well? Kurenai asked quietly. Kakashi nodded. We need to talk, he told her. Walk with me. You 6, here he spoke to the genin, stay here. Naruto, Sasuke, keep the conversation calm. You know what to talk about. Sensei, Sasuke said, nodding at the masked jounin. Kurenai took a last sip of her tea, it really was good, thanks Tsunami, and left the house as the genin entered. Kakashi beckoned for her to follow, and then turned onto the streets. She jogged up to him and soon fell into to step at his side. What happened? She asked quietly. Momochi wasn't working alone, Kakashi said flatly. He had 2 others working with him besides the 2 we captured. One assassin type, disguised as a hunter NBU, and the Dishonored. Kurenai clenched her fists. You met the Dishonored? Yes, said Kakashi with a sharp nod, and Kurenai suddenly noticed how tense his stance was, not at all like his usual overly relaxed act. He knew us, I think. Kurenai frowned at him. What do you mean? He called me the teacher, and had names like that for my whole team, said Kakashi. Sasuke was the other, Naruto was the fool, and Sakura was the rejecter. Kurenai shook her head. What the hell? Naruto's name I can see, and yours is obvious, but the others? And why make up these titles anyway? That's not what's important, said Kakashi tersely. What does he know about us? And I was just an afterthought. Kurenai, the kids were his focus. He was focused on my genin. Why? What does he know about them? Maybe he just likes picking on kids? Kurenai suggested. The thought was not humorous. No, that's not it. Kakashi was firm. He had some kind of connection with my team, at least in his mind. Kurenai bit her lip. If he's going to target us actively, this mission's risk just doubled. Kakashi nodded slowly. I know. Kakashi, we have to go back to Konoha, she said after a time. Our mission was to escort Tazuna on the understanding of the Dishonored's presence. He wasn't supposed to go after us. With that knowledge, this mission is almost certainly S rank. Easily S rank, yes, said Kakashi quietly. But we can't leave. She spun to face her colleague. Kakashi, you know better than to get emotionally invested in a mission, she said quietly. They were, after all, in the middle of a public street, but forcefully all the same. No civilian of another nation is worth the life of even one ninja of Konoha. He turned to her, and his eye was dull. I do, he said. Naruto doesn't. So? She asked furiously, still carefully keeping her voice level. Better traumatized than dead. Not for him, I'm afraid, said Kakashi quietly. And in any case, we won't die. Kakashi, This is an S-rank missing nin capable of taking out a Suna A and B unit. Kurenai wanted to scream at the man beside her. This recklessness was endangering her team, too, but she had to keep her voice down in the street. No one can promise that. Kakashi looked at her, his one visible eye appraising. My team almost can, he said. Kurenai, I wish I could tell you why that's the case, but they're not my secrets to give away. I'm asking you to trust me and my team. She glared at him. I can't do that, Kakashi, she said angrily. Not without a damn good explanation. Then allow me to explain, Kurenai-sensei, said Shino from behind them. The two jounin turned to see the Aburame standing casually with his hands hidden in his jacket pockets. Shino, said Kakashi. Do Naruto and Sasuke? They do not know that I am here, Shino replied to the unfinished question. I fail to see why it concerns them. It is my sensei, after all. And your Hokage, said Kakashi quietly. Was this kind of lenience common? Kurenai frowned, looking from one of the two to the other. What? No, said Shino. But given the circumstances, those of us in our predicament must learn to trust one another's judgment. He cocked his head for a moment, as though considering. Except Sasuke, perhaps. He amended. I think we should trust him, but I doubt I will find myself able to do so in the near future. Kakashi nodded. Understandable, he agreed. I'll leave this to you, then. He turned to Kurenai. Shino will explain everything. I'll see you back at Tazuna-san's house. And then he was gone in a body flicker. Shino came up beside her. Kurenai-sensei, he said quietly. What I am about to tell you will seem unbelievable, but I can promise you that every word is true. He spoke with a quiet assurance that few genin possessed, but which the Aburame were famed for in any case. I will avoid lies of omission whenever possible, but there may be points where it is unavoidable. For that I apologize. So you're in on whatever this is? She asked her genin quietly. Yes, said the insect wielder flatly. Allow me to explain. And he did. Are you all right, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked the moment the two jounin were both out the door. I'm fine, said Naruto, grinning. Everyone's fine. Maybe a little shaken, said Sakura sheepishly. Well, she amended quickly, eyeing the Uchiha beside her, everyone except Sasuke-kun, of course. She knew it was a blatant lie if anyone had come out of their encounter with the armored ninja unafraid. It was Naruto, not Sasuke. But she knew the Uchiha didn't like to appear weak, and how would she look if she tried to explain the odd, warm feeling in her chest when she'd seen him, pale and ashen as a man confronted with death, but still standing and facing down the enemy? How could she explain the bursting fire she'd felt within her at seeing Sasuke look so human, so vulnerable? No, better to get into his good graces by trying not to see what he perceived as flaws in him. I'm sure and Naruto-kun did well too, retorted Hinata hotly, and Sakura blinked at her. He did, said Sasuke flatly. Ah, you know my performance beat yours into the ground, Naruto grinned at his black-haired teammate. Sasuke shook his head. That's the wrong idea, he said, but did not elaborate. Well, what happened? Kiba asked, grinning viciously. I bet it was a pushover, that's why your team stayed and not ours. Sakura opened her mouth to correct the Inuzuka, but Naruto beat her to it. Oh yeah, it was a piece of cake, said the blonde, grinning. For us, that is. You'd probably get your ass handed to you twice before you hit the ground. That's a singular you, Shino said from his place by the door. In other words, he's speaking exclusively to you, Kiba. Am I right? Well, obviously, said Naruto, laughing. Of course I wouldn't insult Hinata-chan. Shino cocked his head. Or me? Well, that's a difficult question to answer, said Naruto, rubbing the back of his head. Then, at the Aburame's lack of reaction, he added, that was a joke, Shino. I know, said the bug specialist dryly. Suddenly Sakura felt Sasuke pluck at her sleeve. She turned to him. He beckoned for her to follow him. As Naruto began an account of what had happened, Sasuke led her to the corner. Then he turned to face her. Naruto's going to tell them an altered story about what happened, he said quietly. Stick to what he says. Don't bring up the Dishonored. That's the armored ninja? Sakura stuttered, flustered by their close proximity. Sasuke's nose was barely 4 inches from hers. Yes, said Sasuke quietly. We're not going to mention him. Why not? Sakura asked in confusion. Well, for one thing, Kakashi didn't want us to. Sakura suddenly realized what their sensei had meant when he said you know what to talk about. For another, it makes sense. We don't want to get teammate worried. The Dishonored is the Jounin's problem, and Tazuna is ours. We shouldn't get teammates Genin involved in him. Alright, she said. If you say so. They'll be distracted otherwise, said Sasuke. We need them focused. She nodded. Alright. She blinked. When did Naruto learn how to lie like that? Sasuke looked away. When he started smiling all the time, he said softly. She stared at her crush, eyes wide. What? You'll get it one day, said Sasuke, his black eyes meeting her green ones again. For your sake, I hope it isn't too soon. He turned as though to return to the group, then frowned and looked back at her. Why did you say I wasn't shaken? He asked quietly. I was probably more worried than anyone else on the team. She looked down to hide her burning face. I thought you wouldn't like looking vulnerable, she said. And she bit down hard on the words. Sasuke didn't move. That was true once, he said. And what? And how well looking vulnerable suits you, she whispered. There was a silence between them. After a moment, Sakura risked glancing up to find Sasuke looking at her oddly. I'm not sure I follow, he said. But now's not the time. We'll talk later. She nodded, relieved, and followed him back into the group. Chapter 31 Reconvening. Wait, what? Naruto said loudly. It was dusk. The sun had just set over the ocean in the west, and the sky was a deep blue, just tinged with pink in the western horizon. All about them, the trees seemed fuzzy and indistinct in the twilight, as little more than silhouettes. The air was cool and moist, and smelled faintly of the salty sea. The three comrades sat together on the grass, already damp with dew, reporting to one another the day's events. Shino had just explained that he had explained their past to Kurenai. Sasuke had simply nodded and was now fiddling with the stalks of grass around him, while Naruto was staring at the Aburame, stunned. Sasuke thought his own reaction was easily the more warranted. Why did you tell her, Shino? Naruto asked, lowering his voice, remembering that it was, after all, getting on tonight. And why didn't you talk to us about it? Kakashi-sensei was having difficulty convincing Kurenai-sensei to stay here, said Shino quietly. Had I held my tongue and returned to speak with you, I might have been too late to prevent Kurenai-sensei from telling my squad to pack their bags. Naruto blinked. After a moment, he nodded. Fair enough, he said. But if that happened, we'd have agreed to tell her, and she'd have withdrawn the order, right? Perhaps, Shino agreed. But then Hinata-san and Kiba-san would have wondered what I had told Kurenai-sensei. We do not need them curious. Hinata-san least of all. Here he nodded to Naruto. It might be psychologically detrimental in ways we cannot predict, as well as compromising our secrets. Naruto looked down with a grunt of assent. Sasuke watched him for a moment before sighing. Maybe we should tell her, he said. Do you think it'd help you to get it out in the open? Sasuke was now out of his area of expertise. He distinctly remembered a time when his entire repertoire of conversational words and phrases was made up, largely, of various grunts. He did not often ask such personal and conversational questions. No, said Naruto, rather quickly. He inhaled deeply. No. I'm just worried that. Well, that it'll be more psychologically detrimental, as Shino puts it, the longer we keep it from her. Them. Shino nodded sagely. You are afraid that Hinata-san will be upset if you hide these things for a long time. Naruto nodded. Especially if I allow us to get closer while I'm keeping those secrets, he said quietly. Then tell her, said Sasuke flatly. Naruto recoiled. No, he said forcefully. I can't. Not yet. She'll be afraid of me. She will not, said Shino firmly. You can't know that, Naruto countered unhappily. Look, all she knows about Kurama is that he's a beast that attacked the village 12 years ago. What do you think she'll think when she finds out that now he's one of my best friends? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Naruto, this is Hinata we're talking about. She worships the ground you're walking on. In hindsight, he really should have seen the punch to his face coming a mile off. Bad taste, Sasuke-san, said Shino calmly, though the Uchiha thought he detected a hint of amusement in the bug user's voice. Regardless of his tactless words, however, he brings up a point that must be considered. Hinata does idolize you to some degree at this point that should give you the time you need to explain fully. Naruto clenched his fists even harder than they already were after punching Sasuke. No, he said flatly. I won't take advantage of her like that. You're trying to fix Sakura, aren't you, Sasuke? He nodded mutely. Not sure how well it's going, he added mentally, thinking of her words that afternoon. How well vulnerability suits me, he mused. It doesn't seem like something she'd say as a fangirl. The mob was always obsessed with how cool and aloof I was. At least I thought they were. He resolved to consider the issue with Naruto's help. Another time, though Sasuke had used up his welcome to bring up topics for tonight. All he could do now was apologize after this conversation was over. It's the same thing, said Naruto firmly. I'm trying to make Hinata-chan see me first, the real me, not whatever monument she's made for me. Sasuke shook his head. He knew he was asking for trouble, speaking his mind on this topic again so quickly, but this was important. Naruto, that can't be done, he said softly. Naruto glared at him. Why not? You're having success with Sakura, aren't you? You misunderstand, Naruto-san, said Shino. Sasuke-san is saying that you cannot make Hinata-san see the real you and look away from the idol for the same reason that one cannot pour water out of an empty jug. Naruto blinked. Sasuke sighed. He nodded at Shino. The Aburame knew Hinata better and would be more able to explain. The bug user nodded back at him. Naruto-san, he said quietly, Hinata-san has had low self-esteem for years. Despite coming from a prosperous family, she has little happiness, and cannot understand how to gain it. Naruto looked down. She is constantly reviled by her family for her supposed weakness, and it has left her with a deep-seated psychological association between herself and weakness. Essentially, she identifies herself with weakness as a defining characteristic. But she's not weak, Naruto cried in anguish. Sasuke studied his face. He looked almost to be in pain. Is that what romantic love is? He wondered. To feel the beloved's pain even more acutely than one's own? I'm not sure I'd want that. You know that, said Shino, and I know that, and Sasuke-san and Shikamaru-senpai and Kurenai-sensei know that. But she does not yet. He leaned forward looking straight at Naruto. And then she meets you. At first, she associates herself with you for the obvious reasons. Both of you are commonly considered weak and both of you lose all your fights. Remember, this is the academy, so you were constantly losing in spars with Sasuke-san. Not my fault, Naruto grunted, grinning weakly at Sasuke. Even if we were both traumatized little kids obsessing over getting stronger, you had money for better equipment and training. That is beside the point, Shino cut in before Sasuke could formulate a reply. At first she felt herself connected to you over the common ground of weakness. To her it was true weakness, because she had been taught that what was commonly perceived was the truth. But then she saw your training regime. Naruto frowned. I've always wondered why that got her obsessing over me, he muttered. What training regime? I mean, sure, I practiced throwing kunai and shuriken and trained a lot with taijutsu, but since I was doing all the wrong things it really didn't help that much. She knew no more than you about what was correct, said Shino matter-of-factly. All that mattered was that, despite coming, like her, from a place of weakness, you were pushing yourself to the limit to improve, pushing yourself with that same, single-minded determination that has served you well for years. Hinata-san saw that perseverance, and soon fell in love with it. Naruto stared at Shino for a moment, his face slightly red. He looked slightly sad. What does that change, though? He asked at length. I don't get it. Shino just looked at him, and Sasuke realized that it fell to him to explain. Hinata does look up to an idol she's built out of you, he said quietly. But it's not like Ino and Sakura and the others are with me. They built a monument out of a mask. Hinata may not have seen all of your flaws, but she's still fallen in love with you. And it's the real you, not some idol she's made up. Naruto stared at him for a moment, then looked away. Thanks, guys, he said quietly after a time. But I still won't take advantage of her. She has to know me first, my flaws included. In the end, it is your decision, Naruto-san, said Shino, standing. I think our conversation is done. I've heard what you two did today. Sasuke nodded, also rising. Naruto followed suit. Then let's head back, said the blonde boy, before they all get worried. I'll go first, said Shino. My excuse was different from yours, and it will seem odd if we return together. Shino had slipped away from the group on the grounds of a need to analyze and possibly assimilate insects in the region he had done the analysis, if not the assimilation, but it had only taken a few minutes the rest of the time they had spoken. Naruto and Sasuke, on the other hand, had left the group on the grounds of a promised spar with one another. Naruto nodded. See you soon, then, Shino. The Aburame nodded and was gone. The two remaining stood together in silence for a time. The night grew chillier about them as the sky, already deepened as they spoke, turned black overhead. The stars were out now, twinkling coldly and impersonally on high, uncaring of the world over which they hung. Sasuke was trying to come up with how to apologize for insulting Hinata when Naruto solved his problem for him. Sorry, the Jinchuriki said quietly. Sasuke blinked at him. What for? He asked in surprise. For hitting you, Naruto said, turning to him. I shouldn't have. We've done that enough to last a lifetime. Sasuke shrugged wryly. I deserved it, he said. I'm sorry for insulting Hinata. It's fine, said Naruto quietly, looking away. Sasuke watched him for a moment, and then continued, Shino's right, you know. She's not like the fangirls. Naruto didn't answer, but Sasuke saw the slight smile on his face. They waited for a few minutes more and then, by unspoken agreement, began the jog back to Tazuna's home. Kiba frowned to himself for a moment after Shino left. Naruto and Sasuke had already been gone for a few minutes. Apparently they were going to spar, and Shino had to study bugs in the land of waves or something like that. Somehow, Kiba doubted both explanations. It was getting late, and all 5 of the remaining team members present were each occupying themselves in their own manner. Sakura was talking to Tsunami about probably something that, were Kiba listening in, would make him want to vacate the area as quickly as possible because of how feminine it was. Kurenai and Kakashi were talking together in low voices. Kurenai looked slightly worried. Kiba wondered what was the matter. But Hinata was sitting alone off to the side, looking horribly lonely as she watched all the others. Kiba himself was playing tug-of-war with Akamaru, but when he saw this he broke off the game and motioned for the ninja hound/puppy to follow him. Akamaru yipped disappointedly and fell into step behind him, clamping the scrap of rope they'd been using in his jaws tightly. Hey, Hinata-chan, Kiba said as he reached the Hyuga heiress. Oh hi, Kiba-kun, said Hinata with a slight dusting of pink to her cheeks. Kiba almost blushed himself, the tint to her cheeks suited her incredibly well. You look glum, he said, sitting down across from her. Want to talk? Oh, she said, blinking rather rapidly. That's sure. What about? Well, he said, leaning back on his hands. In that instant Akamaru yipped and leaped into his lap. He grinned at the small dog and petted him absently. I was just thinking. Hasn't Shino been acting a bit, well, oddly? I don't know, said Hinata, looking down slightly. I didn't know him very well in the academy. Nor did anyone, did they? Kiba shrugged. That's not what I mean. Have you noticed? He, Naruto, and Sasuke have all been, I dunno, something. They've been hanging out together, away from the rest of us. Why you think they're together now? Hinata asked, surprised. But why would they lie to us? Kiba shook his head. I dunno about no, he said. But remember that fight with the Chunin on the road? Naruto and Sasuke work together like ninja, real ninja. No fresh genin works like that, do they? Well, and no, said Hinata, blushing a little more. But Kiba rolled his eyes. But it's Sasuke? And no, said Hinata quickly. I was going to say that it was Naruto-kun. Kiba stared at her in amazement. The dead last? Don't call him that, said Hinata with surprising force. You haven't seen him train. He makes our training with Kurenai-sensei look like kids in the first-year academy physicals. Kiba noticed that she had stopped stuttering, and a slight ache began to grow in his heart. You like him, he said. It wasn't a question. She blushed redder than ever. Is it that obvious? Well, when you're essentially admitting to stalking him while he trains, yeah, it kinda is. Kiba sighed, trying to expel the slight pain in his heart with the breath. You know, if you really like him that much, you should just do something about it. Might save me a bit of pain, he added privately to himself. She shook her head violently. And no, she said quickly. I can't. He likes Sakura. Kiba bit his lip. He privately wasn't so sure of that anymore. Naruto had not once used the suffix chan when referring to Sakura, at least in his memory, in all of the past month or more, while he had more than once done so with Hinata. But he couldn't say so, not when he himself would suffer for it. Then he's an idiot, he found himself saying. He'd be stupid to reject you. She stared at him, pale eyes wide. He grimaced, looking away. His face was getting uncomfortably warm. I mean, she's clearly obsessing over Sasuke, he said, quickly backtracking. He should give up on her. He'd be stupid to reject anyone who actually likes him as much as you. Hinata looked down. Oh. Of course, she said quietly. Damn it. Kiba knew perfectly well that he had royally screwed up. Look, he said, scooting away from her slightly. To give her space, this jostled Akamaru on his lap, who yipped in surprise and jumped off to snuggle up next to Hinata. Can we just forget that this conversation ever happened? As sure, she said, clearly trying to stay cheerful. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Kiba had officially screwed himself over, not to mention hurting Hinata. He knew he should apologize. He just couldn't find the words. Well, back to Shino, he said, trying to lighten his voice and liven the conversation. Do you really think he's been acting normal? And no, she said, sounding grateful for the change of subject. You're right, he has been acting odd. I'm just not sure it's different from how he always has been. And I don't know if you should bring in Naruto-kun and Sasuke-san into it. San? Kiba was surprised even Shino was a kun to her. He wondered what it meant, other, of course, than the obvious she wasn't a Sasuke fangirl. Thank Kami, he added internally. Well, they hated each other in the academy, he said. Not to mention that don't tell either of them I said this, by the way, please, they're actually kind of awesome now. She almost smiled, and he realized how rarely she did so. Even Naruto-kun? She asked. He grinned back. Tell him, and I swear. She giggled slightly. I won't. Good, he said. But what do you think? She shook her head. I don't know. Maybe you're right. But what do you think it means? That's just it, he exclaimed. I don't know. Don't know what? It was Shino. Kiba turned to face the Abirame behind him. Shino, he said quickly. We want to know. What's up with you and Naruto and Sasuke? Shino didn't move for a moment. Then he sat down. It's a long story, he said flatly. And one I cannot tell you. Why not? Kiba asked angrily. I know you're an independent guy, Shino, but we're your teammates. You have no idea how aware I am of that fact. Shino's voice was deadly serious, almost grim. Kiba blinked at him. This was not the answer he'd expected. After a moment, Shino sighed. Kiba-san, I would tell you if I could, he said, sounding almost unhappy. But the secrets I'm helping to keep aren't only mine. I can't tell you. Not until the others agree. And Naruto-kun and Sasuke-san? Hynet asked, sounding quite nervous by all of this intrigue. Kiba was just getting angry. Not exclusively, but yes, said Shino. Listen to me, Hinata-san, Kiba-san, he said quietly. I am more aware of my teammates than most chunin. And I promise you, I cherish that three-way bond. But this secret is about more than us. It's about more even than our entire village. And I cannot compromise it for myself or my team. You must trust me. Kiba sighed. You're just making me more curious, he grunted. But what the hell? He slapped Shino on the shoulder. I may not know you as well as I should, he said, but I know you enough to know that you're not going to endanger us, whatever this big secret is. So I'll trust you. So will I, Shino-kun, said Hinata softly. Shino looked at them each in turn. I am surprised, he said, though there was no hint of the emotion in his voice. And also grateful. Thank you. I will not betray your trust. Good, grunted Kiba. 'Cause if this hurts Hinata-chan, you're dead. Shino looked at him for a moment, or Kiba assumed he was looking in his direction, since it was hard to tell with the goggles. There's already a queue forming for that, said the Aburaim dully. Get in line. Chapter 31 Retraining. The 8 ninja were congregated together in the dining room. Naruto was wolfing down breakfast he'd woken up late, while the others chatted in groups. Sasuke and Shino were talking quietly in a corner. Naruto wondered what about. The rest of Team 8 was making small talk together quietly. Sakura and Kakashi were right beside him. So, what are we doing today, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked conversationally. All the fear and doubt of the previous day had washed away from her overnight, and she seemed as fresh as ever. Naruto almost smiled at it, but kept himself in check. I was that young once, he thought, and a wave of something like sadness swept over him. When did I grow so old? Training, Kakashi was replying simply as his blonde student came back to himself. We have no idea when Zabuza and that dishonored person will show up again, but we have to get as ready as we can. Naruto nodded in agreement, wondering idly what he, Sasuke, and Shino would do with themselves at this point. The tree-climbing exercise didn't even count as showing off. After everyone had finished, Kakashi and Kurenai led the 2 teams out to the forest. Naruto knew where that was going. Fortunately, Kakashi and Kurenai had agreed that it would be mind-numbingly foolish to leave no one to guard Tazuna when the threat was so present. So they'd chosen the 3 most skilled genin, and left them with the bridge builder under strict orders to contact their teachers at the first sign of trouble. So Naruto, Sasuke, and Shino were left to guard their client. Alone. How convenient, mumbled Sasuke once their teammates were out of earshot. One might almost think this was planned. Naruto nodded sagely. We owe Kakashi an Ika book for this, he said. Next time Pervy Sage finishes one, we'll get him a signed copy. Shino shrugged mutely, turning towards the bridge builder, who was sipping at some tea and listening intently to the news on the radio set before him. Naruto blinked. Hey, Tazuna-san, he said, over the slightly static-ridden voice of the newscaster. Ready to go to the bridge? Quiet, hissed the bridge builder, sending him a sharp glare as he cupped his hand over his ear. Listening. Naruto blinked. Why is it so important to hear about what's? Oh. Tazuna needed to know if Gato did anything out of the ordinary as soon as possible. The news was not ideal. Gato had enough money to throttle it, and it had limits to what it could find out, but it was better than no information at all. Naruto patted himself on the back mentally for figuring that out. Couldn't have done that before I was made Hokage, he said to himself cheerfully. Yes, he had matured greatly since the last time he was this age. But not all of his growth was bad. Sakura watched from above as Hinata tried patiently if nervously to assist Kiba in their tree-walking exercise, which the 2 young kunoichi had already grasped quite well. Sakura herself was seated on a high branch. She sighed, her shoulders drooping. She was lonely. Hinata had Kiba to keep her company, and Kakashi and Kurenai were conversing off to the side of the clearing as they watched their students. But who did she have to talk to? Answer: no one. She would even have welcomed Naruto's overeager manner now if it meant she could just talk to someone. But no, he was stronger than this, as were Shino and Sasuke-kun. Her lips twitched into a rueful smile. Naruto, strong on Sasuke's level? She didn't believe for an instant that they were equal, but she couldn't know. They outstripped her by such a margin that she could not hope to measure them. Hey, Sakura, Kakashi called to her suddenly. She looked down at him, blinking. Yes, Kakashi-sensei? She asked. Come down here, he said. You've got nothing to do, so I might as well teach you something, right? She nodded and walked down the tree slowly, so that she could milk the practice for all it was worth. Walking over to her teacher, she asked, So what will you teach me? He shrugged. At this point, he said, you seem to be pretty much a blank slate. We can go into the basics of whatever you like: ninjutsu, genjutsu, or even taijutsu. Your choice. Kurenai says she thinks you'd like genjutsu. She blinked. Genjutsu? She thought. I never really thought about that. She nodded, growing eager. I'd like that. What genjutsu will you teach me? Kakashi thought for a moment, and then nodded. This one should be useful to you, he said. And it's not too difficult. But first, a little bit of the basics. Explain to me how genjutsu is similar to ninjutsu. She blinked. This is like an academic textbook question, she said to herself, surprised. I thought Kakashi-sensei was more a learn-by-doing sort of teacher. She shrugged off her astonishment, though, and answered, both genjutsu and ninjutsu generally utilize hand seals and always manipulate one's chakra for use against the enemy. That is actually only as general rule, corrected Kakashi, smiling at her with his eye. There are many genjutsu and ninjutsu both which are used on oneself or one's allies to gain an advantage in combat. But for the purposes of this lesson, your definition satisfies. Now, contrast the two. What is the difference between ninjutsu and genjutsu? This time she wasn't so surprised. This question was expected. Ninjutsu are the manipulation of chakra to affect things physically, while genjutsu are purely mental attacks. Again, there are exceptions, said Kakashi, surprising her. There are attacks both ninjutsu and genjutsu that break those rules, and the actual definition is a bit more complex. But it will still do for now. He looked at her gravely. This genjutsu is standard in that it uses hand seals, attacks the mind and leaves the body unmarred, and like most genjutsu, requires eye contact. It is non-standard in one way. She cocked her head. How is that? Well, I'll tell you the jutsu's effects, and you try to figure it out, he said. The techniques completely scrambles the target's visual input, making diurnal shapes distort slightly and making every color except black become painfully bright and shift in rather nauseating ways. Now guess how it is non-standard. She blinked and thought about it for a time. At length, she shook her head in defeat. I have no idea, Kakashi-sensei. He shrugged. There was a time when the academy went into chakra theory like this. I always wondered why it's useless to anyone but a genjutsu specialist or a jounin sensei teaching one, and the jounin can just pick it up. I'll explain, sit down. They both lowered themselves onto the grass as he elaborated. Most genjutsu operate purely on the spiritual level. They focus on the transcendent aspect of the mind, that part of us from which the spiritual part of chakra is drawn. That is what they target, turning our very spiritual entities against ourselves. She nodded slowly. The problem was starting to make sense. She decided to try a guess. I think, she began, going off of her only basic knowledge of human nervous systems, I think the jutsu targets the physical impulses in our brains, scrambling nerve transmissions. Precisely, said Kakashi, sounding proud. I knew you'd get it. This technique is almost a lightning-style jutsu, except for one point: you never actively change your chakra nature. Instead, the chakra forms channels inside the retina and brain for the existing electricity to travel along. She blinked a few times. Isn't that very difficult? He nodded. This is where the hand seals come in, he said. Hand seals are made to channel chakra along predetermined channels and systems, setting up an autopilot, if you will. This jutsu is one that's been studied for decades with regards to his hand seal patterns plural because it forms a perfect exercise. He pulled out a slip of paper and handed it to her. Now, on that sheet I've written 4 separate hand seal patterns, each shorter than the last. They all perform that. The first takes the least chakra control, the fourth takes the most. If the first one, you'll just have to nudge your chakra in the right direction, but in the last, I'll have to control it myself completely? She asked in amazement. Motion on that kind of cellular scale is surely too small for any human, isn't it? Of course not, said Kakashi. That's if you use no hand signs at all, and only a true genjutsu master could do that, and trust me, those are the rarest kind of ninja, of all. I don't think there's even one alive right now. But it is about 10 times harder than the first one, and that first one is harder than the tree climbing exercise. Sakura looked at the page. The first sequence was a full 20 hand signs long, the fourth was only 14. How will I practice this? She asked. On me, of course, he said, chuckling. The technique is called Niji no Jutsu. Try it, I'll be fine. She quickly memorized the hand sequence, performed it, and meeting her teacher's sole visible eye, she cried, Niji no Jutsu. Nothing at all happened. Kakashi laughed at her surprise. I told you, Sakura, it's harder than the tree climbing exercise, he said. But unlike climbing trees, you haven't got the obvious indicator of falling down to tell you where you screwed up. You have to go slowly and feel the chakra moving through each step. She nodded, brow furrowing, grinning despite herself. How she loved an academic exercise. She certainly wasn't bored anymore. Gaara looked around at the other 7 men and women around him. He had never known most of them before, but he still felt the kinship that was instinctive to their kind. He had not expected such a meeting until the messengers had come from Kiri asking his father if he could attend. Certainly, he had found it odd that his tenant shared his recollection, but he had thought it a side effect of his own travel. He was right, but not as he had expected. Killer Bee looked around the table, blinking. "Hey, we're short one, yo," he said in his characteristic rhythm. "Where is that Naruto?" Yagura, the Sanbai Jinchuriki who led the hidden mist, nodded. "I wish I could have contacted him," said the Mizukage quietly. "Unfortunately, I cannot exactly go to Konoha and ask Sarutobi-sama if I can borrow his Jinchuriki. The leaf does not much like the mist at the moment." Gaara nodded. "Understandable," he said. "Especially given Sarutobi-sama's apparent love for him." Yagura nodded in his typical calm. "Precisely," he agreed. "But it could not be risked in any case. Gaara-san tells me that Uchiha Sasuke is in Konoha in much the position of the Bija. He remembers. If we do not know his motives, we cannot afford to inform him of our presence." There was unanimous agreement to this. None but Gaara remembered the future, at least among the humans, but through the demons they held all knew of Uchiha Sasuke, the traitor. "Will he recognize any of us if we go to the Chunin exams?" Niyujuto, B's comrade of the Nibi, wondered aloud. "Or if he did, would he assume that he had simply not noticed us in his previous exam?" "It might just work for Yujuto," laughed B, "but I'd stick out like a sore big toe." Gaara introduced his forehead to his palm with an audible smack. "Sore thumb," he corrected quietly. "Please, B, if you must rhyme, make sure the rhymes work." B shrugged. "The big toe is a man's foot's thumb," he said. "Didn't think the Kazakage'd be so dumb." Gaara twitched. "My seal is a bit weak, B," he said quietly. "Please don't get me worked up, I might go into a blood rage." "I can see about getting a Kiri seal master to fix that seal," said the Mizukage in genuine concern. The man had many faults, but he cared fiercely for his fellow Jinchuriki. Gaara shook his head. "It's too large a change in me for such a delicate position," he said. "My father wouldn't like it, and that might interfere with our plans for the Chunin exams." "What's with the fixation on the Chunin exams anyway?" asked Fu, a Takigakure ninja who bore the Nanabai. "What happened then?" Gaara almost laughed. "Everything, Fu-san," he said quietly, putting his head in his hands before looking up at her. "When I think about it, there is really very little that could not have been averted if something had just been done about the Chunin exams. But it all revolves around that blasted Uchiha," said Gyuki's disembodied voice from his position within B's spirit. "And he's already gone through it. What will it change?" "The exams are still a point where many of our potential enemies and allies will congregate," said Yudakata, a ninja in Yagura's employ who carried the Rokubi. "If the Kyubi's Jinchuriki and the Uchiha have not killed one another by that time, they will both be there. Orochimaru will be present, as will Yakushi Kabuto, who Gaara-san says has inside information on our real enemies the Akatsuki." "You say something interesting," said Gaara, nodding at Yudakata. "If they haven't killed one another. Now, we would know if either died, and Konoha news would have reached every village in mere hours. But if my information is accurate, and it generally is, they are now both out of the village on a mission." "Then what are we waiting for?" said the Yanbi carrying IWA shinobi, Rishi, as he stood up quickly. "We have to stop them." "Peace, Rishi," said the man's comrade of the Gobi, Han. "We need a plan first. If this Uchiha is truly as dangerous as he is said to be, brute force will be insufficient from any one of us, and for two it would be a problem. 2 Jinchuriki against 1 Konoha genin, who is last of a prestigious clan, would be a serious political faux pas." "Even one would be," said Gaara quietly. "Konoha loves their Uchiha. No, we need incontrovertible proof that Naruto-san was threatened before we can strike at Sasuke." "So one or more of us goes there and watches him," said Yujuto, nodding. "I could do it." "No," said Yagura, shaking his head. "Not alone, at least. One of our more experienced members must lead a squad of at least 2. "I have something to say, yo," interjected B suddenly. "I think Gaara should be the one to go. He, Shikaka, and Gyuki are the only ones who fought Uchiha, and only they won." Yujuto glared at B. "But he's no older than I am," she protested, looking at Yagura. "Why should he go when I can't?" Who said anything about that? Gaara said, raising an eyebrow at her. You're coming with me. There was a moment of silence as every Jinchuriki looked at him. He sighed. The Bijou are each representative of an animal, he said quietly. Yujito-san carries the Nibi. Cats are notorious for their stealth. Is she inadequate in that department? He asked B, almost sardonically. B grinned. No, sir, not at all, he laughed. She's silent as the sky is tall. Yujito looked down at the praise. Gaara nodded. I expected that. He looked around. I doubt I need to explain this to you, Yugura-sama, he said with a deferential nod at the Mizukage, but here are my reasons. Konoha is at odds with every village save Suna at this point. But that is not an equal dislike across the board. IWA hates Konoha, and so Konoha deeply mistrusts IWA. Kiri Konoha considers to be, at this point, little more than a tribe of bloodthirsty barbarians, meaning no offense, of course, he added with another nod to Yugura. The Sanbai Jinchuriki just shrugged apathetically. Taki is, while too small to be a concern, still exactly that small enough that my being seen by its known Jinchuriki would be far too strange for Konoha's liking. What if Taki were acting as a proxy in negotiations with a larger village? That is what they think. It's a common political stratagem. But Kumo? Konoha doesn't like Kumo in the slightest, but their relationship isn't so marred by either tragedy or bigotry, if you will. Yugura nodded. So it is wise to send a Kumo shinobi with you. It is less suspicious than the alternatives. Precisely, Gaara said in affirmation. But there is another constraint. Uchiha knows of him well enough to know of his relationship with Naruto-san. If both he and I made an unscheduled appearance together, so close to Naruto-san's position, it would be a foolish risk. So I'm out for today? B asked. At Gaara's nod, he clapped Yujito on the shoulder. Tell me all about it, okay? Yujito nodded, giving him a deadpan look. Your rap could use work, Bisama, she said. He just shrugged. So that's it, said Utakata. Gaara-san and Yujito-san will go to watch over Naruto-san and Uchiha to prevent any unpleasant surprises. Yes, said Gaara, standing. Yugura-sama, you told my father to expect me back. When? In 10 days more, said the Kage crisply. I thought it best to give us ample time. A very wise choice, Mizukage-sama, said Gaara. Naruto is currently in the land of waves. If we travel light and quick, Yujito and I should arrive in 3 days. Yujito nodded, standing up as well. She watched him warily. Don't you think of trying anything on this trip, she warned. Kumo won't stand for it. Gaara sighed. Still the old obsession with village boundaries, he mused. There should be no borders between us. We're in much the same boat wherever we are, aren't we? Don't worry, he said aloud. Far too much is at stake for me to jeopardize it. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as I did putting this epic what if together. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single twist in the story. Drop your thoughts, theories, or even wild ideas in the comments. I read every single one. And hey, if you're craving more awesome Naruto content, go check out the other videos on the channel. I've got plenty of heat waiting for you. Until next time, stay sharp, stay awesome, and remember, even a shadow clone needs love. Peace out.